Okay. And we're on air also? Okay. Good evening, everybody. Happy March, even though it feels like February. We are going to start off with my favorite part of our meeting, reports from our student liaisons, Jacinta Smith and Thomas Seward. So turning it over to you guys.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. As per usual, the warm weather last week coincided with the end of winter sports. Wrestling concluded their season with a historic outdoor meet on the turf, the first of its kind in Section 1 history. Boys basketball unfortunately lost a close game in the semifinals to Mount Vernon after a hugely successful season. Girls basketball sadly lost to New Rochelle 41-52 in the first playoff game after another impressive season from them. The bowling team earned second place in the regional sectionals, capping off an awesome year. And hockey sadly lost a rough one to the ETB Eagles, a team consisting of Eastchester, Tuckahoe, and Bronxville students in the finals of the Southern Westchester playoffs. So congrats to all my fellow seniors on amazing, unprecedented seasons. That was really something special. And wasting no time, the Fall 2 season of sports is beginning this week for the first ever season of this kind. Football, volleyball, and girls swimming all missed out on their traditional fall timing and are all planning to participate in this new abridged season in between winter and spring sports. And we wish them the best of luck moving forward. In other news, the Social Events Committee is holding some St. Patrick's Day events tomorrow to bring some spirit to the school, including a virtual Name That Tune, a pot of gold scavenger hunt, and a classic Guess How Many Marshmallows Are in the Lucky Charms. I know that the spring excitement is coming upon Mamaroneck students, and we can't wait to see what the end of the year brings. We're in preliminary talks right now about how graduation is going to look in June, and we're super excited to have a more normal graduation, hopefully, than last year, while still integrating some of the aspects that we thought were huge successes, such as the car parade and more.
Thank you so much, Thomas. So, as you know, this month is Women's History Month, and there have been plenty of events this month to celebrate it. Like the Women's Engineering Club of MHS, in collaboration with the Society of Women Engineers New York and Long Island section, hosting a panel of female engineers last Thursday for interested engineering students at MHS. Soon we will also see posters of influential women in the STEM field on the walls throughout MHS to replace our previous first Black History Month posters for last month. Another philanthropic club at MHS, our Stand Up to Cancer Club, is spreading awareness by selling custom pink t-shirts for all students to wear for Pink Day on April 14th. So I'm looking forward to that. It's really wonderful to see MHS students investing their time in causes throughout the community. For the anniversary of the first COVID case at White Plains Hospital on March 9th, volunteers from our very own MHS choir serenaded the nurses and doctors with a beautiful a cappella performance. I know Thomas and I are also looking forward for teacher trivia next Friday that we will be emceeing for all the students to see gym teachers, physical education teachers, social study departments, English teachers go head to head on funny things like pop culture and TikTok. So, and we can't forget, MHS is highly anticipating going to full capacity. The ways that students have adjusted to Focus Fridays, advisory, and masks is really commendable. And I know that the determination students have grown since last March to continue their interests and clubs, given the pandemic, is long lasting and something that'll define our generation. We're looking forward to resuming school-wide activities and class events for the spring. So thank you, everybody. And that concludes our little intro.
Thank you, Jacinta. Thank you, Thomas. And it really is hard to believe that, we're now at the 1-year anniversary of COVID when we shut down. And I know I see Dina Madden on this. I watched the video of the students playing at White Plains Hospital, and I had tears in my eyes. For you in the community who haven't seen it, it really is, it's really worth seeing. So thank you. Thank you to the music students. And thank you, Jacinta and Thomas, for all you do in the high school and maintaining, normalcy, engagement, resiliency. Keep doing the good work. So thank you.
All right,
you so
thank you.
much.
Okay. We are going to move on to items to be removed from the consent agenda. If a board member wishes to remove an item on the consent agenda for further discussion, a motion to remove item from the consent agenda must be made. However, once a motion and second are made for the consent agenda items listed below, simple questions can be asked regarding any of them, as you would normally do for individual resolutions. Consent agenda A, approval of the minutes of the 3/2/21 study session. B, approval of personnel actions. C, approval of the treasurer's report from February 2021. Approval of health service agreements and amendments. Approval of budget transfers. F, acceptance of bids. G, acceptance of arrangements for appropriate special programs and services as recommended by the CSE CPSC. H, authorization to declare certain items obsolete or relocated. I, acceptance of gifts and donations. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second, Ariane.
Thank you. I'm just going to read the gifts and donations. That was 400 bags of school supplies, staples valued at $2,160. Supplies were donated by Staples customers during the month of January and February for the Mamaroneck School District. So thank you to Staples and to everybody who made donations at Staples that went to the school district. Bob, is there anything on this consent agenda that you wanted to mention? I see that we've successfully hired 17 aides under the personnel agenda, so that's terrific.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. I do, again, to that point, we continue to explore ways to meet the staffing needs to support the transition back to April 8th. We've been working hard to identify candidates who want to serve as teacher aides, and so we're happy with the number of individuals who are interested in the positions. We'll continue to move closer to that magic number.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to Jeremy for being able to hire all those aides. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item 7, resolution. A, emergency resolution for the immediate repair and cleanup of sewage backup and excavation at Mamaroneck High School. Whereas a significant backup of sewage was discovered in the basement of Mamaroneck High School on the Post Road side of the building that required immediate cleanup and excavation, whereas the school district has determined that the blockage of sewer main pipe and sewage backup at the Mamaroneck High School threatened the health, safety, and welfare of students and staff. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education declare the immediate repair and cleanup to be an emergency as a result of the aforesaid, and be it further resolved that the Board of Education authorizes the immediate cleanup and disinfection of the area affected by the sewage backup and excavation and repair of the blocked sewer main pipe at the Mamaroneck High School as an ordinary contingent expense of the board, and authorizes the superintendent or his designee to enter into agreements for the cleanup and disinfection of affected area and the excavation of the Boston Post Road and work related to said excavation to clear the blockage in the sewer main pipe. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second?
Second, Ariane.
I'm assuming that this was something that in order to declare it an emergency repair, there had to be some finding of health and safety, but there was no threat of health or safety to students in the building at the time. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Sylvia, you want, yes.
Yeah, sure. So
Okay.
Friday afternoon, we became aware of a backup in the basement. The timing of it honestly was really fortunate in that we were able to have people there all Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday repairing it. There was some more residual work during the week, but at no time was anyone in any danger, but we had to get it cleaned up before we could bring students and staff back on Monday.
And the actual area that was under construction or in terms of repair was really the main street, Boston Post Road, where it connects to the main sewer. So
Right.
that's where the issue was, but obviously the backflow is how we became aware of it.
Thank you. Did I ask for a motion on that already or no? I don't remember, so I'm going to ask again. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second? Oh, thanks, Gladys.
Yeah.
All in favor? Aye.
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 I'm sorry, B, approval of legal notice and resolution establishing annual district meeting and election to be held on May 18th, 2021. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the legal notice and resolution establishing the May 18th, 2021 annual school district meeting and election, notice of petitions and public hearing. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second, Ariana.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approval of workers for the May 18th, 2021 budget vote and election of trustees. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves workers for the May 18th, 2021 budget vote and election of school board members as indicated on the attachment. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second?
Second, Ariana.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
D, resolution to approve the county's Board of Election trained election workers as alternate workers for the 5/18/21 budget vote. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the list of trained budget workers from the county's Board of Elections list to be used as alternate workers for the school's budget vote on May 18th, 2021 to be paid at the district set hourly rates. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second, Ariana.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. E, resolution to appoint an acting district clerk. Be it resolved that the Board of Education appoints Giovanna Mascoli as acting district clerk until June 16th, 2021 for the purpose of voter registration and absentee ballots in the event the district clerk is not available. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second?
Second, Ariana.
All in favor? Aye. F, resolution regarding a consent judgment in a tax certiorari proceeding. Resolved that the Board of Education authorizes its attorney Shaw, Perelson, May, and Lambert LLP to execute a consent judgment in a tax certiorari proceeding captioned Manufacturers and Traders Trust Company versus Town of Mamaroneck and the Mamaroneck Union Free School District. And it's further resolved that the board authorizes the refund of taxes as required by the terms of the consent judgment. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second?
Second, Ariana.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
D, resolution regarding a transportation appeal. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education upholds the prior determination of the superintendent and denies the transportation appeal for busing for student number 120900066. Can I have a motion?
So moved, Paul.
Second?
Second, Ariana.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, Bob, turn it over for superintendent's report.
Thank you. I would say a primary focus of my report is just to give an update on preparations for transitioning the district to full day in-person instruction and continuing with the remote learning option. Last week, we had the opportunity to host a parent forum just to give the general overview of our plans and everything that really is underway as we consider welcoming back students to full day learning, in-person learning, and continue to provide an option of remote learning for families who believe it is working well between now and the end of the school year. I'm happy to report that as of Monday morning, about 99% of our parents and families confirmed their commitments for either in-person or remote learning. I would say overwhelmingly, a majority of students and parents at the elementary, middle, and high school level have reported they are excited and eager to return to full day in-person learning. We have approximately 124 elementary students who will continue as remote learners. We have about 117 middle school students will continue on as remote, and about 227 high school students. So as you can see, a majority of I'd say learners are coming back, and we're excited, and there's a lot of work ahead. So on the remote side, we're currently working as an administrative team to organize our elementary grade level remote pods and teaching assignments. I want to say to the board and certainly to the community, given the I would say heavy lift or enormous responsibility of school leadership teams at the elementary level to welcome back students and plan and prepare, I've asked our director of research, assessment, and accountability, Dr. Claire Reinhardt, to serve as our K-5 remote academy administrator. Dr. Reinhardt will serve as the, I would say, administrative liaison or point person in terms of communications. As you know, we are reforming our grade level remote pods into grade level district pods based on the number of students who are continuing at each grade level. So Dr. Reinhardt will collaborate with our school leadership teams at the elementary level and also with our remote teachers, and have the opportunity to communicate with parents and just ensure that on the day-to-day basis between April 8th and the end of school, that there is an administrator who's really overseeing and leading the remote academy. So Annie, I don't know if you want to add to that or just that.
Sure. Yeah, just that process is well underway. And I think that Claire coming on board in that capacity is going to bring a lot of oversight that's just going to be to the benefit. We have some teachers that are continuing to teach remote pods, but also, as I think you just mentioned, because of the reconfiguration and most classroom teachers returning to the classroom by combining their pods into an in-person class, we do have the need to hire some additional staffing for the remote pods, which is a nice opportunity for people who are hoping to get that kind of opportunity to break into classroom positions here. So it's a lot of work, as you said, in the next 2 weeks, but I think we're excited to welcome kids back both in person and remotely, really being able in the remote pods to put into practice everything that we've learned through the fall from, the combined experiences of all the teachers across grades.
Thank you, Annie. Meanwhile, obviously our school leaders, leadership teams are just focusing on the details of transition plans, revisiting arrival and dismissal procedures and protocols, finalizing plans for lunch and recess, working on transitions between classes, classroom setups with teachers, health and safety protocols. So it is starting from ground zero, essentially, working through all the details, preparing for Thursday, April 8th. We will continue at the building level to host what I would say parent meetings in the coming days to provide some recorded webinars just to provide details specific to each building and to answer questions that parents have about what this will look like, what to expect, and so on and so forth. We're starting now to work with teachers to transition classrooms with desks and desk shields. We're looking at issues around PPE, and we're moving forward. So there's a lot of work ahead between now and until we depart for spring break. I'll have the opportunity to provide an update to parents, to our staff as we count down to April 8th, make that transition. We're mindful of, and certainly want to understand, certainly for our youngest learners, this idea of transition. And so kind of helping them transition our remote learners to say goodbye to their classmates, or their virtual classmates in some cases, and teacher, and make a smooth transition for the remaining quarter of the year. And so lots to think about. I know that Dr. Mazzoni is working with student support services to just talk about services. All of our plans around academic intervention supports is really being kind of planned and prepared for. And so there's a lot of moving parts, but we're excited and we're moving forward.
And
I
Bob,
wanted-
if I could just add, like we did in the fall, a couple of days after school opens, we'll have a Zoom for parents of all 3 levels to talk about how the special education services and related services are embedded into the new schedules. So we'll make sure everybody's aware.
I also just wanted to share with the board, we have been prioritizing through our partnership with Westchester County Department of Health and the State Department of Health, the opportunity to provide, what I would say, opportunities for staff, all district personnel to schedule appointments for the vaccine protocol. And so just to give you a sense of each week, the progress around prioritizing educational professionals, all district staff members, to gain access for appointments for the COVID vaccination. I just want to summarize where we're at building by building with teachers in terms of general percentages. Central, we have about 65% of teachers who have either begun or completed the vaccine protocol. At Chatsworth, it's 85% of teachers have begun or completed the vaccine protocol. At Mamaroneck Avenue School, it's close to 70% of teachers. At Murray, it's at 66% of teachers. At Homix, it's at 58%. And at Mamaroneck High School, has the largest group of teachers, it's at 66%. So district-wide, we're about 68, 69. We're encouraging as many staff members, teachers, and all other categories of staff to participate in the vaccine program, and we'll continue to update in the next several weeks and let the community know. Today was the first day that I reported to the Department of Health. They're now, through the executive order of the governor, mandating that I provide week-to-week updates on the numbers of staff who are vaccinated. So they are tracking that through Governor Cuomo's executive order.
Thanks, Bob. And just
No, Bob, I was just going to ask, and Bob, the governor also just recently, I believe yesterday, signed legislation indicating allowing teachers and staff to have paid time, correct, to get vaccines during the day, if I remember correctly?
Because we certainly wanted to prioritize access to the vaccine, from the start when teachers and educational professionals became eligible, we have agreed to, during the professional day, to allow for that paid release time. So this is not a change in practice for our personnel, but I was happy to see the governor enforce this through an executive order. But this is that has been our practice since we've been eligible to receive the vaccine.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And I just want to, before we transition to budget, there's been a lot of ordering, a lot of work that needed to take place to ready classrooms that's still going on. Sylvia, I know that you took care of ordering picnic tables for each one of our schools, the desk shields, our staff that has to then, install those desk shields. So I just want to give a thank you to all of those people who've been working so hard, and also to our staff and social workers and our building principals who reached out to remote families to speak to them and explain to them what coming back to school would look like, because I can understand that, some families had some concerns and hesitations. So a big thank you to them. I mean, there's just not enough time in our board meetings to thank everybody for all the unseen work that is going on that makes a significant impact. So
I also just want to acknowledge on the curriculum side as well, from teachers and instructional coaches, our instructional technology coaches. Dina is here this evening. Dina Madden, our K-12 music coordinator. Barry Suman, our K-12 director of athletics, PE, and all thinking about the impact of transitioning with a higher concentration of students just how we think about continuity instruction around music, instrumental instruction, around expanding the curriculum at the elementary grades around social studies and science units. So it is, a team effort. It is a huge commitment because we're focusing on daily instruction and then doing the planning work and the coordination. And so my hat's off to our entire district administrative team. Certainly, we've had a number of conversations with the teachers union president and teacher leadership to kind of answer questions to make sure that everybody is fully involved and informed as we move closer to the April 8th transition date. So it's exciting. It's in some ways overwhelming, but we're going to get the job done, and we're looking forward to really make sure that parents, students, and our employees have a full understanding of what this is going to look like and what it means to bring, I would say, a majority of our students back K through 12. So thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, if there are no questions right now, we're going to transition to the superintendent recommended budget presentation.
Okay, thank you. And okay. So thank you very much. This is our budget session number 2. And I just want to, again, ask that as we go through the budget review sessions, as individual board members have questions, seek more information, it's our interest to provide that information not only to the board, but to the community. We hope to continue to provide answers to general community questions. This evening is going to be a long meeting because we are certainly committed to what I would say unpacking the instructional portion of the budget, to talk about what I would say is the main component of the entire budget, that is teaching and learning and our programs and services. And so we are in some ways bridging the past by thinking differently about where historically we had the Saturday meetings where we did a line by line review of the budget. The goal tonight is to talk in detail about the instructional components, and I'll get that in a minute, and just make sure that we walk through all of the items that are considered in the budget book under the 2,000 range of our line item budget. To begin with, I just want to remind the board and our community that we have a budget calendar. We will continue the budget presentation and discussion on April 6th. And we'll certainly consult with the board about any additional meetings prior to the April 20th adoption of the budget by the board and the property tax report card. And so there's more time to, again, respond to community questions, to provide more information as necessary. I want to begin tonight and just start out by summarizing where we began in the budget discussion. We are proud of the fact that the budget we're presenting as the recommended budget includes marginal increases to major expenditure cost drivers. We've talked about it at length about collective bargaining agreements, increases in salaries for all our employees, managing the cost of employee benefits, primarily our employee health insurance plan, understanding our ability to develop programs and meet the needs of students under special education programs and services, but again, limit annual increase in costs. We know that the starting point for this budget, as I explained to the board, is going back to the adopted May 2020 budget. This budget includes as a foundation all the programs, services, and activities that were approved by the voters on May of 2020 prior to considerations of expenditure reductions in the summer and the fall. I want to highlight that this budget provides for a minimal budget-to-budget increase in tax levy increase. The budget is actually growing by 1.48% budget-to-budget increase, which is historic, I would say, in line with budget increases over the last 10 years, but certainly on the low end for an increase over the current budget. At our last meeting, a board asked for just a summary of expenditures from 19 and 20 and the current year 2021 funds around COVID expenses and expenditures in order to, again, open our doors in September. And so I was going to ask Assistant Superintendent for Business Operations, Sylvia Wallach, to kind of go through just and just highlight the areas of spending to really plan for and implement school this year. So Sylvia?
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everybody. So this first slide is showing the expenditures that we used for remote learning. And as you can see, there were a significant amount of funds from 1920 spent. Those funds were available because we saved money on things like transportation and utilities at the end of the school year, having closed in March. So we spent a little bit over $1 million of the 1920 funds on remote learning, and that included Chromebooks, thousands of Chromebooks, school supplies, books, and art supplies that went home, monitors and display units for the classrooms, for the teachers, software and licensing for all of the programs that your children are using currently to learn remotely, Wi-Fi access for students that didn't have access to it, web cameras for the classrooms to enable us to video stream. So you can see we also continue to spend funds in 2021. And for the remote learning, we spent about $1.6 million in total over the course of 2 budget years. And these are what we're calling the health-related COVID expenditures. Again, 1920 funds were expended initially. We've bought desk shields. Many of the desk shields and desks are recent purchases to enable students to come back at a higher capacity next month. We bought the needlepoint bipolar ionization air purifiers for the classrooms, and our maintenance mechanics installed them. There was some additional staffing for custodial overtime early on in the health aides, cleaning products. I'm sure you're aware of. We've purchased a significant amount of masks and gloves and gowns, cleaning equipment with the air sprayers that you may see our custodians go into the buildings, into the classrooms in between sessions. Currently, they use to spray down the classrooms. The testing that we did earlier in the year after the December break, funds we've spent on physicians and consultants to help us through this time, and then some other miscellaneous expenses, totaling on the health related about $1.4 million. So as you can see, we have spent to date a little bit over $3 million in the COVID related expenses.
Any questions by the board just on the COVID summary expenditures?
So the only question is in terms of assumptions for the 21-22 budget.
I would say,
Rob, you want me to answer that? Or?
Sure. I mean, as a starting point, Rob, and I have it on the next slide, we're assuming that we're going to obviously prepare for a regular return to school, possibly under continuing DOH safety, health and safety regulations. I think as Sylvia and I have talked about the possibility of the status quo, so to speak, it's really understanding where we will make adjustments in the budget to ensure that we have the necessary resources and or staffing that will impact what we're directed to provide relative to the regulations, and or the possibility at any time we may have to pause and adjust based on a changing public health environment. And I think as we, Sylvia and I discussed this and something to talk to the board, as we move closer to finalizing the budget, understand where we are around state aid, where do we understand, the possibility of at least adjusting the budget if we were to receive additional aid as a contingency relative to possibilities around COVID. But there's a lot that will happen between now and the time we adopt the budget and have a clear sense of what revenue we may receive or not, and then have to make some decisions just as we did over the last year relative to adjusting the adopted budget to meet the challenges of a COVID environment. Sylvia, I don't know if anything to add?
Yeah, I think you said it all. I mean, we're operating as if we're going to come back, and if we do find that we have to incur expenses that are COVID related, we will, really do what we've had to do for the past year is that look to see what we can, reduce in order to fund those expenditures.
But one of the things I think that we were in the situation last year is that we're adequately resourcing this budget. So we're not in the same position of having to cut a little from here, from there, from various student activities going forward, that we have enough money in this budget so that we will not find ourselves in that position again, either in this budget or in our reserves. I know we'll go back to that later, but I just think that that's an important point because we don't want to be in the position that we were in, which was unavoidable, last year. We just don't want to be in that same position again.
And I would say, Rena, and I appreciate that, and I would agree. I think what's different, at least from last year, was the uncertainty around state aid and, our belief that we could rely on or had some understanding what the commitment was by the state based on the collapse of the economy. What's changed now, at least, is we've had the federal bill that was passed, and we know that New York State will receive additional funding. The real question, as I alluded to in the next few weeks, is how will that pass through to local school districts? Separate from that, I know that Sylvia has pursued through FEMA, reimbursements around some of the expenditures. We're waiting for that to play out. So there's a lot of question marks around funding that may, in some ways, provide, at least opportunities for us to plan accordingly, in addition to just using the approved budget and making those adjustments.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions around COVID expenditures?
Bob, in regards to expenditures and keeping in mind how some schools might have had more shutdowns due to exposures than others, how does that, has there been any, how does that relate to the expenditures that we're projecting for and trying to prevent those and meeting that need for that school community?
Well, I would say this, both the House, New York State Assembly and Senate, and even the federal government has identified the possibility of earmarking some of the aid for learning loss and just programs that will meet academic needs of students. So we're waiting for that to play out relative to some creative opportunities to provide support, academic support, as well as social, emotional, and mental health support. So if you're speaking, Christian, about generally, additional funding to kind of be creative relative to the needs of students who've had some learning loss or interrupted learning based on COVID, that's one aspect of it. I think if you're suggesting if we were to see some form of change in the public health crisis, what resources could we apply maybe for testing and to ensure continuity of learning going forward to avoid what I would say these shifts, sudden shifts to or extended shifts to remote learning.
Thank you, Bob.
Sure.
So sorry, just to make sure I'm understanding that, Bob. So the additional funds for catching up to close the COVID gap is dependent on the state?
Well, there's, I would say that not necessarily. I think right now, I mean, and we don't want to make assumptions about catching up or learning loss, because I would say, we presented several weeks ago just an update on, academic progress in the area of reading and literacy. I think what we're trying to say is that there's been conversations about allocations of funding within additional state aid proposals, both from the federal level that pass through the state and within the state, that would be targeted, be limited to or targeted to learning loss or learning gap on academic progress. That has to be kind of worked through the political process, even if it's going to be considered.
Okay, but if that doesn't happen from the federal to the state to us, is there some accommodation
Just where we are from the federal government has already allocated the fund. So that hurdle has been jumped over. And the question now is, how do those funds get divided up through the budgetary process in New York State, which is currently underway? So where we are with that is that there are the one House bills with the Senate and the Assembly with a certain amount of money, and we will get how we allocate the money that we will get, because we will see additional funds. How we allocate it is different from how it's designated. I guess that's not really clear. We'll get a pot of money. We're going to get more money. There is a separate line saying that X number of dollars is to be allocated to learning loss.
And the only thing I would say, I would caution, I'm not convinced yet we'll see higher state aid. I think we are hoping for it and assuming when the state elected officials finalize the budget that we'll see additional aid based on the federal bailout. I just don't want to speculate at this point beyond what we've put into the budget. And that's why between now and the time the board would adopt the budget, or prior to the budget vote, we'll have a clear sense of what's coming in terms of additional aid or not. I think, Rob, what you're getting at is in the absence of additional resources,
Yes.
how are we focused
Right.
on learning loss? I would say for one thing, we are committed to the summer program, the summer slide intervention program that we've been certainly committed to for a number of years at the elementary level. We had the co-op program. I think we're going to look through Title I allocations for the fall of creative, as we have done in prior years, to use that funding to supplement or, and certainly support additional academic experiences for students that we would target. So there's potential for different title grants to organize programs that we've done for students who are most at risk as well.
Thank you. And I think as we get further into the slides, there'll also be some discussion of additional programs that are in this budget to address some of the issues that have come up as a result of COVID.
Okay. So just to set a context for a return to discussion of the budget, the assumptions that are really guiding the budget development and the recommended budget, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, return to full-time in-person learning with the possibility of continuing health and safety regulations or restrictions. We've certainly, in terms of the expenditures in what's in this budget that we'll discuss, is returning programming to the levels, as I mentioned, the 2021 adopted budget. And in addition to that, targeted new initiatives. Similarly, staffing levels that will provide for the programs and services that we expect around class sizes and extracurricular activities for students, maintaining class size averages in course offerings based on historical guidelines and enrollment prerequisites. So, and then finally, as we've just mentioned, assumptions around state aid that's based on the governor's executive budget. And so that's the starting point for the recommended budget. Certainly the board has the opportunity between now and time you adopt the budget to make recommendations, adjustments, and can see how that goes in the coming weeks. So just to remind the board and just to summarize where we're at for the community, the superintendent's recommended 2021-22 budget is $144,714,871. It represents a $2.1 million budget to budget increase, or 1.48% budget to budget increase. The tax levy to support this budget is $131,311,044. It requires an additional tax levy increase of $2.5 million, or a percentage increase of 1.99%, under 2%. The projected tax rate is 14.01, or 25 cents per thousand of taxable assessed value. And we estimate that the average tax increase will be at 1.84%. And the impact on assessment is $316, estimated on a average assessed home at $1.2 million. I think it comes out to on a basis, on a monthly basis, of additional tax increase of about $27 per month on that same assessed home. So that's just a summary of the budget in terms of the statistics and the numbers. As we get into discussion tonight about the instructional component of the budget, in the initial presentation, I focused on program goals that translated to experiences, I would say, in programs. I just want to complement that tonight by discussing goals from the perspective of our students. And so to begin, this budget, we believe, will continue to nurture our students' social emotional development and overall well-being, which is certainly a priority for our district. It will allow us to strengthen opportunities for access and educational quality for all students in our diverse community. And so this focus on access and opportunity to learn is critically important, and it will be translated, as you'll see, into our program experiences in a few moments. We look to empower our students to become lifelong stewards of our community and our planet, and that really connection is, again, very straightforward relative to the experiences we offer our students, the authentic experiences, connecting what we do in our classrooms to the broader world, and taking ownership and responsibility for not only our community and our state and our region, but for our country and for the world. We also want to continue to focus on and develop vibrant curricular and co-curricular programs at all levels. Again, continuing with our tradition of creating authentic learning experiences and programs at all levels. Continue our investment in tech tools and various learning platforms, and that ongoing priority and commitment to sustained professional development. How we build our model of coaching within the district, so we are building the opportunity to provide sustained professional learning for our administrators, for our teachers, for all our employees, to strengthen the quality of our educational experience. I thought it'd be great to start as well with just reminding our community. There's been a lot of transition into our community over the last several years. And I felt that in some ways, we just look at our programs that we offer and the experiences under the current context and lens. But there is a history involved in how the board supports continual investment in program and learning experiences. So I would like to just share a sampling of programs and resources that have been added to this budget over the course of the tax cap law. And so the interesting challenge has been to say, how do you continue to invest and expand programs and learning opportunities, provide additional resources, but maintain growth in the budget that falls under the tax cap and is responsible in terms of fiscal management to the community. So at the elementary level, for those of you who've been around for some time or have had students who've gone through the system, you might remember that prior to 2012, we offered a half-day kindergarten program. And so close to 8-9 years ago, I recommended that we shift to a full-day K program, and that has been the model ever since. As you know, we're going to, in this next budget, I would say celebrate the expansion of our dual language program. It will mark a full K-8 program for the first time in our district. And so we're very proud of adding both at the elementary and middle school the dual language program. We've had a strong commitment and emphasis on social emotional learning, the Yale Ruler program, Responsive Classroom, and a commitment to promoting social emotional skills and well-being for our students. Several years ago, we introduced the Elementary Capstone Project in 5th grade, really focusing on and really prioritizing inquiry and the asking of important questions and having students investigate passion and interest and share their learning with the community at large. The board has been a strong supporter of our initiative around literacy, supporting the literacy ambassador position. It's made a significant difference in the growth and progress of students in the area of reading. We also had support from the board and the community to commit to a response to intervention coordinator. And I would say that the individual, Suzanne Carroll, in that position has now served as a regional leader in terms of RTI, instruction, best practices, and we're very proud of her professional work, but also the impact on all students across the system. We've had an ongoing commitment to summer slide prevention at the elementary level, and looking forward to the next cohort for the summer, as well as introducing coding and digital citizenship curriculum, really K through 12, but focusing on the emphasis on tech skills and digital citizenship coding from our earliest learners all the way through our high school. At the middle school, we've expanded the range of after-school clubs, expanded our modified sports offering. We introduced the very popular e-music course, and Jeremy Franze, in partnership with the Schools Foundation grant, is doing wonderful work, groundbreaking work in e-music, and students are becoming composers and authors of music. In our partnership, Taryn Delaney, our food science, consumer science teacher in middle school, partnership with Stone Barnes to introduce the food ed course, and is really an anchor to our focus on sustainability and green initiatives, and really helps students prepare for the culinary program at the high school. We've added the director of student life position and looked at school climate and focused in on affinity groups and lunch experiences and helping students transition at the middle school, and expanded computer science and robotics at the middle school. Moving on, just again, a sampling at the high school. We now have a vibrant land and underwater robotics team that is very competitive both regionally and nationally. We've had strong success in our high school debate program. We've added and really emphasized a strong focus on building course experiences in the area of STEM. And so we have a multi-course sequence in computer science at the high school, including AP Science. We introduced several years ago the AP English Language Composition course, and now over 55% of our high school juniors are enrolled in the college English course in their junior year. We've expanded the senior internship. We've added an engineering course sequence, the design course, including the design collaborative for our seniors that really emphasize the design process. We've added, and I'm very proud of our emotional support program to support students who are certainly struggling with emotional issues and the ability to maintain consistency of school attendance. We have a thriving exchange program with a partner school in China through our certainly longstanding Chinese program, the Shanghai Experimental School, and very proud of the focus on access to rigorous courses with the Mamaroneck Scholars Program. And then finally, district-wide, we've added the Director of Dual Language and E&L Programs position, administrative position. We've expanded our co-teach model, which has been thriving across the system. We've added an assistant technology specialist. We've invested in ubiquitous Wi-Fi in all classrooms. We've certainly invested in one-to-one technology, sustainability initiatives. We have, beginning last year, created a CSE evaluation team and added a district social work position. So there's a lot there that has been added in the budget in less than, what I would say, a decade. And we've been able to do this with sound fiscal management, and certainly very proud of what the continuum of additional programs and resources and educational opportunities that currently exist in this budget. That was a mouthful. So tonight, we're going to focus in on the instruction portion of the budget. It is the majority of the overall budget, as you can see here. It speaks to about $81 million of the $144 million budget. So there's a lot to talk about. As we follow up to our next session, we'll focus in on the operations, employee benefits, transportation, general support, and fund balance. But tonight is about program. It's about instruction in all parts to that puzzle. So for those who are watching at home, for our board members, we literally are going to go through and just summarize and speak in detail of all the functions or areas of the budget that are included in the instructional component. To begin with, the first area or function is the curriculum and development and supervision. It is the code 210. This area of the budget really includes the staffing and salaries for the curriculum office and clerical support. It also includes funding are expenditures for our regional partnership in our curriculum council. So we, for many years, I've been partners with the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, where Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction Annie Ward and many of our teachers, our department chairs, have connected to ongoing curriculum initiatives, professional development. I believe, Annie, that's where with the opportunity to meet April Francis Taylor as part of her work around social studies and the social responsive curriculum frameworks. It is the heart and soul of our, I would say, connection to the broader professional community and professional development. Dr. Helen Pashley, through the science, next generation science standards, is connected to Putnam Northern Westchester Curriculum Center. And so it is our partner in curriculum development. And that really speaks to, if I could just say, that speaks to the entirety of this. And of course, there are issues around supplies and materials as well.
And I just want to point out to the community that, you know, there is a lot of information available on the website. Our prior board meeting, there is a link to the budget book, which includes some of the lines that are subsumed within 2010. And in addition, also on board docs for this board meeting, there is a budget status report. That's something that's reported out monthly by the board, where you could see what the appropriation is and where we stand with those expenditures. So line 2010 is included there also.
Right. So this is, and thank you, Rena, this really is going to be a line by line, what I would say, function review of this area of the budget. In this particular case, the budget to budget increased $16,000 and 16,000 roughly, or 4.19% increase. It's specific to additional fees for our partnership with BOCES, as well as adjustments to salaries for everyone who is associated with the curriculum office personnel. And that's really just a summary of that area of the budget. Moving on, under supervision, I'm sorry, I think I jumped ahead. Okay, I'm sorry. Under supervision, regular school, which is 2020, this area of the budget really focuses on our school leaders, our administrative personnel, and clerical staff managing all aspects of school life at our 6 schools. They are certainly in charge of the day learning activities for roughly 5,429 students across the district. They also have a significant supervisory responsibility. We have over 500 certified staff, 50 teaching assistants, 142 teacher aides, and 11 school nurses. And so it is the responsibilities of our building leaders or school leaders to not only certainly lead the day-to-day teaching and learning activities, but spend considerable time under this idea of supervising and evaluating staff as well. The budget for next year is actually decreasing by $60,822. This adjustment is really due in part to the reduction in the clerical staff within the buildings, adjustments in total number of clerical staff. So slight reduction here, but the expenditures that are listed in the budget really speak to the salaries of our personnel. The next area for discussion is research assessment and accountability. This portion of the budget really is specific to the Office of Research Assessment and Accountability, as I mentioned by the title. This area of the budget is personnel is responsible for our registration process, for submission, ongoing submission of mandated reports to the Department of Education, to the federal government. It really, this office under the direction of Dr. Reinhardt oversees the HOPE state assessment program. So our 3rd grade through 8th grade math and ELA assessments, our Regents assessments, all that scoring is all coordinated through this office, as well as managing daily attendance. So there's a number of clerical staff that works with Dr. Reinhardt, and they have significant responsibilities for the district. The budget adjustment is primarily here associated with the purchase of Aparu software. So because we've centralized registration over the last several years, we moved away from a building level registration process. We're trying to certainly accommodate and support the document process that is attached to registration. We've had the opportunity this past year to evaluate Aparu software. It allows for the transfer of required documents in a very, what I would say, friendly manner. So because the registration process is heavy on submission of documents, we wanted to make sure that all of our families have easy access to submit supporting documentation. And so this software allows you to scan through your phone, take a picture, and upload through a secure software the documents that be required. The beauty of the software is that it has certainly utility around any transfer of documentations and forms for all school-related functions. So we are starting off focusing this next year on using the software for registration process, but we look to expand the use to provide for parents to submit field trip permission forms, sign off on the code of conduct, accessible use, all the communication or written communication that goes back and forth between home and school. So we really see great value, and that really reflects the additional cost associated with this portion of the budget. Okay, as you have questions as I go through this, I'll try to just summarize any of the changes. In this particular case, you see in the slide the increase in $38,000, which is primarily the software. There's some adjustments in salary for personnel as well. Okay, the next area of the budget to focus on is teaching regular school. This is the largest component of the instructional budget, I believe. For next year, we're proposing $46,478,617. This accounts for all staffing that is related to regular programs K through 12. So teacher salaries, instructional supplies, textbooks, contracted services, equipment, BOCES services, salaries for our aides, clerical personnel. So I would say this really captures, for the most, outside of our staffing for special education programs and services, a majority of the costs associated for daily instruction. The increase of $638,503, or the 1.39% increase, is really attributed to the additional positions that I highlighted in the opening budget overview. We are adding 2.4 certified staff in this budget, and that is included in the expenditures. We have also salary adjustments through our collective bargaining agreements for all the staff that is included or captured under regular school. As I mentioned, this budget, based on our enrollment projections at the elementary level, includes 116 elementary teaching positions as well as one contingency position in anticipation of change over the summer. But essentially, this speaks to everything that we can think of within what I would call regular school of the budget. I don't know, Sylvia, I don't know if you have anything to add, Annie as well, but this is really in some ways self-descriptive in terms of the budget book and all the categories of supplies, materials, staffing, salaries that are connected to our school. Any questions by the board?
Bob, just a quick a comment. So, and out of the 46,478,000, roughly 44.6 million of it is salaries, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would say, the increase of 638,000, which is primarily attributed to salary adjustments and additional staffing position, is probably the smallest increase in several years relative to salaries. And, overall for our staffing at this point. So again, getting back to the original overview, the ability to slow down the growth of expenditures in programs, but maintain the quality and in the breadth of programs and experiences.
And I just want to pause for a second. This is the largest part of the budget. Does anybody have questions on staffing? Okay, Bob, I know you had projections on numbers for kindergarten and of all of our classes. We've allocated one contingency position. I imagine this is something that we're going to be continuing to look at very carefully as registrations continue through the summer.
Absolutely, and not even into the summer. Dr. Reinhardt provides weekly updates based on changes in the kindergarten registration as well as new registrants in all other grades. We are on track right now, consistent with prior years in terms of where we are at this point in time. But it's something that we'll have to monitor. As the board knows, I typically, based on our process, provide a recommendation in August by August 15th, reflective of any changes in additional enrollment in the elementary grades or at the secondary level to act on the contingency position. If you look at the budget book, we actually, by just doing the typical moving and advancing current students up to the next grade, have accounted for about 114 sections at the elementary grades. We've budgeted for 117 with the contingency. So we do have some room based on number one, where we have room within a particular grade in a school, if enrollment would increase or change. And at the same time, we do have additional positions right now as we move closer to the, summer. And, historically, and it's hard to tell or predict, but in the last several years prior to the change in COVID, we had anywhere from 100 to 200 additional registrations in the summer months. And so it's something that we'll continue to report out between now and the end of the school year and keep the board and the community informed as we move closer to the start of school. Any other questions about this portion of the expenditures? Okay. I thought this was a great moment since we have breadth of programs in terms of what's included in the regular school component of the budget, to turn to Dina Madden, our K-12 coordinator of music, just to highlight, because in the budget that I've recommended, we are adding a 1.0 FTE music position. We're committed to generally shifting the PACE staffing back to, I would say, pre-COVID staffing levels. And we are also introducing recommending two new courses at the secondary level in the area of music. So I've invited Dina to just kind of summarize, the philosophy, the program experience and participation of music, and then just to touch on the course recommendations for next year. So Dina, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me tonight. And so, I know I've spoken several times at board meetings, and I'm sure that you've heard our philosophy, but really it is in line with the district's philosophy of providing opportunities, musical opportunities, that is, for all students. And this year especially, we really were focusing on creating that sense of community and instilling the love of music. We really want kids to, feel that social piece of music. And we're hoping that we were able to achieve that not only virtually, but also in person and hybrid. In a typical year, our students in the district perform in over 125 concerts and performances. What's interesting is back in 2012 and 13, when I did our board study, that number was a lot lower. It was about 100. And we went through and counted every performance. And that doesn't include the county festivals and state and national competitions that we go to. And we have been increasing on and on, whether it be small ones within school or, the normally, winter concerts, spring concerts. Of course, this year has been very different and quite virtual, but that is where we are with our students in a typical year. And of those, we have over 70 different performing ensembles, which has increased. It's incredible the growth that has happened, over the past, 10, 15 years. And we of course know that the enrollment has increased, but to have that many ensembles, and of course to be able to collaborate and have our students collaborating, not only and crossing from elementary and high and having string buddies, things like that, and mentors, it's really exciting. And our music faculty, of course, represents, some of the highest participation and leadership as conductors, coordinators. And so we're really not only part of our music department within Mamaroneck and our community, but we really branch out a lot further throughout Westchester County and throughout the state. So that I'm very proud of that. When you look at the numbers that you see below, you can see the growth that has happened. And really what I'm featuring here are just our performing ensembles and e-music. You can see the growth that's happening. Of course, as you look at 2020, 21, the numbers have changed, especially at the elementary level. We have students who are, in music virtually, and, in chorus, we are offering to students selecting, which is what we normally have, but we don't have our grade level choruses. So it's a little bit different this year. And so the hope is that as we move forward, we'll be able to get students back in and performing and playing as we move on to the middle school and high school. Okay. So are you able to go to the next slide? Thank you. So the goal is to broaden opportunities, to give students more opportunities, and to provide equity. And so there are a couple of areas that I want to highlight that we are really trying to look at. So when we look at that decline of the elementary enrollment, and especially it was the instrumental program and right now the choral program, we really want to provide entry level. And I'm really quite excited because we've never had that opportunity at the 6th grade to say, you know what, do you want to learn to play the trumpet? Do you want to come in at that entry level? And so what my hope and goal is that those children that might have said, I'm going to hold off virtually playing an instrument, they're going to have that opportunity at the 6th grade to start at an entry level. So that's the first piece of it. So to keep our instrumental teachers and choral teachers teaching the craft that they do, but then be able to also broaden with world drumming. We really have been very fortunate, again, through the Mamaroneck Schools Foundation, to be awarded a grant for percussion instruments. And world drumming is a course that really has become such an integral part of really a vast amount of music programs in the United States. And world drumming, it allows opportunities for students to get a better understanding of rhythm and music and ensemble playing while learning about other cultures and places and becoming really global citizens, of the world with really deep understanding of cultural understandings. A typical world drumming program features drums from Latin America, Brazil, West Africa, South Africa, Ghana, Portugal, South America, Cuba, China, and America. And so the instruments that we were able to get through a very generous grant will be featured and allow our students to touch on all those different areas of music. And so the hope is to broaden what we're able to teach, but yet still keep the instrumental program and choral program that we have at the Homix. At the high school, year after year, we have many students who take AP Music Theory exam, the exam only. We do not offer a course at the high school. This year, registered for May, we have the most amount of students. There are 12 students who are taking that exam. Now, those students are studying on their own. They're seeking outside private instruction to learn the material and take the exam. What we're really trying to do is provide equity so that any student can learn the material, not just the ones that can, have the resources to take a private instruction to take the exam, but to allow all kids to be able to take AP Music Theory in 11th or 12th grade. And so I am very confident that there will be many students who will want to take that course, especially since that number each year has grown from maybe just 4 or 5 to now 12 students, and we're not even teaching a course. So I would very much imagine, looking at the scope of kids who are already registered, that there will be many students within our ensembles and in the high school who will be able to take an AP Music Theory course. And then lastly, just to kind of show how we're re-envisioning some of our programs. Currently, we offer applied music. Many schools throughout the district offer credit for students who go and have outside music lessons. So if you take a piano lesson down the block, you can get credit for that. And what we'd like to do is re-envision that and allow students, because what we're finding is it's those, once again, those students who have the resources to be able to take that lesson. What we want to do is provide equity so that those students who really need that instruction can get that instruction in school, which currently now we are doing, but students are not getting credit for it. So we're re-envisioning it so that now students who are in band, orchestra, and chorus at the high school will be also enrolled in what's called Ensemble Lab. Instead of it being an outside applied music, they would be getting their credit for Ensemble Lab, coming during lunch, their free periods after school, to get this extra lesson that's given by our teachers instead of just for those who can get an outside private lesson. So we're really excited about that. So this way we're really thinking about all students and giving them all the same opportunity.
Can I ask you a question about the first bullet, the entry level instrument instruction, Dina?
Yes.
Is that going to be limited to students who have not taken an instrument in elementary school? Or if a child wants to pick up a second instrument, are there going to be slots for them also? Because the intent seems to be for students who did not have an opportunity to pick up an instrument in elementary. So I just want to.
So I guess when you're saying a second instrument, are you saying that the child is playing an instrument already at the Homics and wants to now play a second instrument, that kind of thing? Or are you saying, well, that's a scheduling kind of issue. You know, if the child's in band, then.
No, it's elementary virtual decline enrollment in the elementary.
So what I'm targeting is that, let's say a 5th grader. So right now, a 5th grader has decided, I don't want to play right now because it's virtual. And I'm noticing that the numbers in band and orchestra and strings at the elementary 5th grade have decreased, because I'm sure that many students have said, you know, this is not really what I wanted. I wanted to be playing next to my, you know, trumpet player in class. So what we're saying, and what I'm saying is, okay, 5th grader, you're now going into the high school, into the Homics. Their choice in 6th grade is band, orchestra, or chorus. So instead of that 5th grader saying, you know what, I've got to go to chorus, because that's really the way it was. You had to be in 5th grade band in order to get into 6th grade band. Now what we're saying is, if you want, you can come back to the 6th grade and play your trumpet, even though you didn't play it. Or for that matter, if instead you want to try the cello, then we're going to try that out too. So we're really broadening, and it's going to be a challenge for our teachers, because now they're going to be teaching different levels, and we'll have to think of what that looks like. But I'm very confident, because we have teachers who are teaching, you know, through Zoom, and I think that we absolutely can do it. And the conversation with our teachers is absolutely, we want to give kids an opportunity that if they really feel that they would like to take on an instrument, that we'll give them that opportunity. And this might be something that we'll keep in place as we move forward. Does that answer your question, Rena?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
I just want to say I absolutely love that you're doing that. I think that, so from everything I've seen, your ability to share the love of music and make it contagious and keep finding new ways to offer it to our students is incredible. So thank you for that. I think it's so great that noticing that there might have been this blip because of the remote, and sort of not making that be the deterrent for incoming 6th is really fantastic. So thank you.
Right. Thank you. And once again, I always like using the word pilot. I think we're gonna try it out, and then we'll see how it goes, and hopefully it will be something that we can keep in place, and we can see if that's something where there might just be yet another inroad. So if you didn't have an opportunity, once again, we want to make sure that it wasn't because a kid couldn't get on Zoom or something like that. Or and for that matter, we just want to keep kids enjoying music, and that's why we're even putting this world drumming in, because that might connect to a whole different group of kids that maybe don't want to sing, or that are not in e-music or that kind of thing. All right, we could probably go to the last. And so this is just a simple outline to show you in 2019 where we were with our staffing, and then where we went this year. And so the hope is to reinstate the PACE music program, which is a 0.6. And then for the music department, it would be a 0.4, which brings us back to where we were in 2019 at 20. So, we're really excited, but yet it's not going back to where we were. We're really kind of just grown through this year, and actually, realizing that there are some things that maybe we can create, and kind of re-envisioning what our staffing is and what it will be. So that's where we are, I hope.
Thank you, Dina. I just want to take this moment to just acknowledge your leadership. This has been an incredibly challenging year for our music staff. They have been not only innovative, they have really adapted to the challenges and conditions, and been remarkable in the commitment to making music. And I had the opportunity to invite Dina to a regional conversation about fine arts with about 54 districts in our area. And I was very proud of the fact that many of the superintendents acknowledged Dina's leadership regionally, and just her collaboration with other district-wide music directors to ensure that kids have the opportunity to play. And I don't certainly want to ignore the fact that we've continued with our beginning instrumental program, which is an anomaly in the region, because we really know that making music at the earliest grades is something that connects kids to school. And so thank you, Dina. Thank you to the entire music staff district-wide, and for your leadership and just creativity in finding a way to make music during a pandemic. It is extraordinary, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate your leadership as well.
Well, thank you. And really the thank you is on our end, especially the support from the community and the support from the administration. I mean, really, it sounds cliche, but we really couldn't have done it without all of you and all of your support, and the community who really do value music. And I'm just completely honored to be part of this team. Thank you.
I just want to point back to the board's commitment to program review, because many of the recommendations that came out of the music program review several years ago have been put in place. I would say at the middle school, as been described, we have certainly adopted as a core value that all students will be engaged in playing or making music, and that the success of the e-music course, and now our interest is working from a 6-12 perspective to say, how do we have that strand grow? But our commitment to ensuring that all students have access, have the resources through whether it's the rental of instruments or presenting of instruments along the continuum, that has come out of the program review. So we're making great progress. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Thank you, Dina.
Thank you, Dina.
Okay, moving on. The next area of the budget is the school library, 2610, if you're following through the budget book. This area of the budget really focuses on, obviously, staffing and salaries for our school librarians, as well as our library support staff. Included is certainly expenditures for digital resources, our subscriptions, related materials and supplies. And so the adjustment here, $4,110, the increase of this budget line item is specific to salary adjustments for our librarians. Again, our librarians have been phenomenal this year in ensuring that books are in the hands of students. There's been continuity of what I would say is this kind of love of reading that really is central to the librarian's role. And we are very appreciative of their hard work as well in this unusual moment. But this will continue to maintain the resources that we expect in our school libraries, as well as our digital resources and salaries for our librarian personnel. Okay, moving on to computer-assisted instruction. This area of the budget focuses on all funding for software contracts that are tied to instruction, the management of student data, our eSchool data, which is really just all the issues of student management, of course scheduling, of attendance, of our school schedules, and day-to-day tracking of student enrollment, attendance, and so on. All our web filters. So this is a range of technology resources that supports instructional technology, our IT network. The funding in this particular line item is connected to supporting our IT network wireless connectivity across the system. It supports the one-to-one tech equity plan, which I'll get into in a minute. It provides for resources for technology devices and one-to-one computing. It also includes our dedicated elementary and secondary instructional technology coaches. I would say that the decrease in this budget, also, in terms of the overall decrease of 24,176, also includes, I would say, an increase in spending of computer software and wireless computing. We've had some efficiencies, and certainly through financial support this past year of the American Schools Foundation to purchase what I would say teacher technology kits, we've been able to look at in this line item efficiencies. We had, as Sylvia suggested, some advanced purchasing of Chromebooks for our students. And so we feel on the hardware side, we're in very good shape in terms of our cycle of replenishment, making sure that we have devices for all students who need them. The focus really, and I'll talk about it in a minute, is really advancing our multi-year technology plan and maintaining the tech equity as well. We spend, you'll see through this budget, approximately $963,403 for technology. As the board and the community knows that tech resources are critical to everyday learning in our classrooms, and especially now with COVID as well, overall. So just to kind of give you an overview or summarize various components that are connected to instructional technology. As you know, we had to certainly respond to the conditions of learning of COVID-19, supporting students and teachers. There are a lot of lessons learned from last spring around tech equity. And so, as I mentioned, beginning the school year, the Mamaroneck Schools Foundation provided a significant grant to equip all teachers, all our professional staff, with a mobile computing device, either a Dell laptop, a Google Pixel Book, a Surface Pro laptop, a second interactive screen, document cameras, wireless keyboards, and headphones. And it's interesting because that kind of mobile computing, which allowed the flexibility for teachers to teach remotely from anywhere or in the classroom, has really been what I would say the ingredients of change around innovative practice. We have teachers now who are moving away from being tethered to a computer, who have been very creative and adaptive in how they're using technology for instruction. And so we see this as a starting point of change and innovation around using technology to support teaching and learning. At the same time, we understood that we had the responsibility through our tech equity plan to provide resources to students. This really is a summary of what we were able to accomplish around providing devices for students. We distributed 2,300 Chromebooks, K-12. We provided 190.
You've been doing so much talking. I want to give you a chance. Why don't we just leave this up for the community to read, and why don't you take a sip of water, because you have.
No, and I'm fine. I'm on a roll, quite frankly. I appreciate that. I'm trying to get us through. There's a lot to cover. I mean, the bottom line here is that we've maintained our responsibility of tech equity for students. I think the question going forward is, how do we ensure that all students have the opportunity to gain access to technology and the resources that families need around connectivity. Similarly, I would say that this budget provides for ongoing support for devices for our professional staff, and it's made a significant difference overall. Just Dancy provided just to get a sense of what this looks like in terms of the distribution of technology across the system, just the concentration of Chromebooks that were requested by school in the districts, as you see here, and then just another view in terms of distribution by grade. So it's interesting that, a high concentration of Chromebooks were provided to our elementary students. That has been at the core of both remote instruction as well. Moving forward in our tech equity plan, we're going to continue with this commitment to one-to-one computing in grades from second grade to grade 12. We are going to maintain what I call BYOD/district issued device options. Many of our students feel more comfortable coming to school or using their own device. And so it's a combination of having an adequate inventory of devices to provide all students, as well as offering choice for students going forward. We will continue to evaluate and have on hand Wi-Fi hotspots for eligible students and families. We're in the conversation now and talking with area internet providers about creative funding for access to robust Wi-Fi for all families that need them. And one of the things I'm very proud of, and again, I thank our computer teaching assistants, as well as Jess Dancy and Mike Sammartano, our two instructional coaches. We've been providing daily tech support to students and families. And that's made a huge difference in ensuring that all these devices work and students can get connected to daily instruction and communicate with teachers on a consistent basis. One of the things I want to highlight in terms of a priority is the continuing investment in our IT network infrastructure. And so what you see here is just a 3-year plan to upgrade our wireless connectivity. Next year through this budget, we plan to focus on the high school. We knew almost 10 years ago when we went through a 3-year commitment to invest in wireless connectivity in all areas of the buildings and all instructional spaces, there would become a time that the next gen of wireless APs would come forward. And so we are now launching into a 3-year upgrade. Next year, we plan to replace our switches to strengthen the gig connection from the closet to the classroom. And we'll replace all our wireless APs at the high school. In year 2, we'll move to the HOMICs, and then we'll, in the final year of this upgrade, if we have the resources, we'll shift our focus to the elementary grades. So this is really an investment in technology infrastructure, which is critical. I would say regionally, we are a leader in the quality, in the speed, and the consistency of internet and wireless connectivity. And so thank you to our Director of Technology, Adish Ramratan. Thank you to Sylvia for looking for and committing to the funds, and all our technicians as well. We have, through all this storm, been very consistent in access to the internet and the use of technology. Okay, now I get to take a deep breath. I'm going to turn things over to Annie Ward, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, to take you through the next portion or section of the instructional budget.
Thanks, Bob. And now you can get your drink of water, well earned. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to talk with a few slides about curriculum and instruction and professional development. So you've already seen in that previous section that Bob went through where the bulk of teachers' salaries are in the budget. And I'm just going to talk, as we turn to talk about staff development, to understand who these providers are and then the corresponding codes, which would be either salary codes or in some cases, consultant codes. But to sort of put a human face on it, when we talk about leadership and support for teachers and for students in this realm, we can talk about positions that are in the district. And I should say that in these 2 columns, we're not actually proposing any budget increases or decreases. We're essentially level funding and staffing our instructional leadership and our professional development codes. So what that looks like is people that are on staff here are our directors, several of whom are on the call this evening with K-12 responsibilities. We also have a number of district coordinators. So when we talk about the art, music, PE, a number of coordinators in student support services. These are teachers who are then paid a stipend to take on leadership, which means convening system-wide meetings of folks in those departments in order to ensure coordination, consistency, et cetera. I can tell you right now that our coordinators of art, music, PE, and library have just been working like crazy to figure out how we're going to reconfigure, working with building level administrators, our schedules at the elementary level to accommodate both the return to full-time learning as well as the continued remote learning and ensuring that we have specials for our kids that are going to continue learning remotely. We have department chairs at both the elementary and at the middle school and high school level. At Homix, those department chairs are full-time teachers who are stipended. And at the high school, they're teachers who have a one course reduction in their load, who then also receive a stipend. And they provide just vital leadership in each of the academic content areas at the secondary level. We have, as Bob mentioned, instructional coaches in literacy and in math and technology. And then we also have specialists, and that's how I'm referring to them. We have teachers who provide academic intervention services in both literacy and math, but also our content area specialists who do provide important collegial support and some element of coaching for their peers. And then we have, in what would primarily be consultant codes that you'll see as I advance to that slide in a moment, we have funds to support our affiliations. Bob mentioned earlier the very active Curriculum Council at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, which is our mothership in a lot of ways. And there are, at that Curriculum Council, there are regional directors. I know Bob mentioned April Francis earlier, and she had been a regional director of social studies. There's a regional director of science, and we are continually tapping those folks to make sure that we are using all available resources, sort of the power of that BOCES. Even though we're a non-component district, as the board knows, we subscribe to that Curriculum Council, and it's very, very powerful. Then there are lots of other regional and national, I think we're missing a word there, but regional and national networks, some of which are, these are peer networks, some of which are facilitated through that BOCES. We also belong to the Tri-State Curriculum Consortium, which is a powerful group of districts in New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey, who come together in sort of a critical friends model. National associations, National Council for Teachers of English, National Council for Social Studies, et cetera, and specialized consultants that we bring in when we have a niche of need. And you heard from Bob about general priorities. I'll share with you in a moment just some specific professional development initiatives that are coming up this year. Bob, you can advance that, please. So just a long list here. And again, you can scan this. Bob has alluded to a number of these, but these are all initiatives that are going to be on the front burner in the 21-22 school year. And I think we put a smattering of things from the elementary, middle, and high school. It's a very, very, one of the things that we know when we go out to recruit for teaching and or administrative positions is that people are drawn to us because of the high support that we're able to provide in budgets like this one for teachers that ensure that the high expectations that we have for teachers are met with really high levels of professional support and opportunities to continue learning and growing. It's what makes our professional community, I think, very attractive, and the high number of applications that we have for our positions. So you can just see here, right at the top of the list, Bob mentioned in those perennial values, our commitment to social emotional learning. And also right now, as the board is well aware, we are very committed to implementing the first round of initiatives that are part of the district equity team multi-year plan. In my own realm, or the realm here that we're just discussing with curriculum and instruction, we're very committed to launching a curriculum audit where we're beginning in social studies, but branching out to other areas. That's going to be a K-12 study. Also, with the support of the Education Foundation, we have Sarah Silverman, who received a grant from the foundation, facilitating a very well subscribed seminar seeking educational equity and diversity. She was trained over the summer up at Wellesley College, although it was done virtually, of course. And then you just see the variety of other things. We have an evergreen, I should say, relationship with Sheldrake Environmental Center. So all those nature education programs for kids and support for teachers are in the budget. We're making a transition at the elementary level to the Bridges to Mathematics curriculum, which we put on hold this year due to the pandemic, but are eager to get back on that track. The Science 21 curriculum, which is very well supported, not just with hands-on materials for kids in this budget, but also support for teachers. And you can see, those of you that have been following the development of the HOMICS schedule and know that some of the next steps there, which are very exciting, have to do with program development for both the advisory and that intervention and enrichment period. We're going to be looking at lunchtime options for kids. And then you've heard from Dina about that music course, the world drumming, and some of the things that are in the works at the high school connected to the capital project work of the culinary pathway. We're doing a lot of exciting coordination between HOMICS and the high school, making sure that those experiences are really well coordinated and leading to a lot of options for kids. And then some redesign at the high school of both English and science elective offerings. The board has heard about some of those initiatives through the curriculum committee, and certainly something that we can devote more time at public meetings if there is interest. You can advance, Bob. So going into the budget, I sort of provided the color commentary first, but in the budget book, the codes that I'm referring to are grouped together in one category from beginning with 2712 and going to 2751. So just some detail at the bottom, 2712 are summer technology workshops. We have that line in the budget every year, but you can imagine how that was just a godsend this summer to enable Jesse Dancy and Mike Sammartano, as Bob said, to really get teachers a leg up. What did we learn from the spring experience, and really tooling up for the opening of school in September. Then the 2722 code is a request made by building administrators, which we are pleased to support so that they have funds to distribute for staff development projects of their priority within each of the buildings. 2723 includes salaries for some of the coaches, as well as district level consulting funds. So if I'm going to bring a consultant, for example, from Research for Better Teaching to work with our administrators on analyzing teaching, or a skillful teacher course for teachers, those are the kinds of things that would be funded out of that code. And then finally in 2751, that's actually a code that enables us to pay teachers for participating in curriculum development work in any out of contract time, which could be during the year, or most typically might be summer curriculum development projects. So for example, the social studies curriculum audit through the equity team that I mentioned a minute ago, we certainly will envision bringing teachers in over the summer to go deeper into that work of any curriculum revisions so that new units are ready to be taught in September.
And really,
And
kudos
so
to you, Annie.
Sure,
Okay.
I was just going to comment on the budget to budget increase, which is 1.3%, about $13,381. And I mentioned it's level funded. So I believe that those increases stem from the building level staff development. Those might be requests made by individual administrators, because the larger district-wide codes I've kept level funded.
Thank you. And what I was going to say, it looks like that is under like line 12, the 13,000 increase under math and reading specialists is where it is in the budget book.
So then that would be contractual salary increases then.
But
I'm sorry, go ahead, Rita.
No, I just want to commend you. I know that there's been a real shift to building capacity within our buildings for a lot of the professional development. I know we bring people in from the outside as well, but just being sure that there's sustained professional development as opposed to, one-offs where people go, which, are still important to inspire people and bring that learning back. But you've really created a culture here of continuing to learn and grow and having teachers share with one another. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, our teachers are the engine of this powerful system, right? So having that continuous opportunity, that the phrase is job embedded professional development, is so important. And there's actually, I know, Rena, you've been around long enough to remember when those coaching positions were created, and we did spend a lot of time reviewing research on impact of professional development, and that in-house coaching model really far surpasses the impact. External consultants are important because they have niches of expertise, but I think that to really see changes at the level of classroom practice and really helping teachers increase their repertoire, so to speak, it does take that follow through. So thanks for mentioning that.
And also this issue of curriculum consistency and just making sure as a system that across the system teachers are exposed to and familiar with and proficient relative to instructional strategies, content, and so on as well. And I think that's a hallmark to our system around consistency.
Yeah,
We really needed it this year. It really
paid. That's what I was about to say. I think that it's interesting because I'm always amazed when always amazed at the impact of the summer tech PD, for example. But this year, when we look at what teachers are doing, with Dina on before and we spoke about it, but watching these remote instrumental music lessons are just astonishing, and actually finding that there are many components of what has been developed in this kind of Apollo 13 mother of invention, necessity being the mother of invention, are actually skills and tools and techniques and strategies that we do plan to continue going forward in just about every content area that I can think of. So there have been silver linings, but it's because of that spirit of our teachers and the ability to support them in the ways that we've just described.
Any questions from the board just on curriculum instruction, staff development, resources in the budget? Anything that
I think it would be helpful in a future board meeting, just maybe to discuss, Annie, maybe after, as we near summer, the type of lessons learned from this past year and the sort of professional development you'd like to see going on perhaps over the summer, for a later board meeting.
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you, Annie. I'm going to now turn things over to Dr. Norma Mazzoni, Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services. And similar to Annie's presentation, just starting off with giving an overview of the staffing who are connected to Student Support Services, continue on to go into detail into very components of Student Support Services budget. So again, thank you, Annie. Nora?
Thank you, Bob. So good evening, everybody. As Dr. Shep said, we always like to start with a reminder about the breadth and depth of resources which really fall under the umbrella of Student Support Services. As you can see from the list in front of you, which I won't read, the majority of staff in our department work with all students in the district. And we keep kind of pointing out that Student Support Services is not synonymous with special education. Special education is a subset of Student Support Services. So the majority of our staff work with kids that are both classified and non-classified. And as I've often said, I think people have heard me say that these are the professionals who work with our families and their students in the whole continuum from, putting a Band-Aid on a scraped knee to recovering from a significant crisis. So they're really there at every stage that families go through, that kids go through, pre-K to 12. So especially, this year, this is a group of professionals whose expertise has supported our school community all through the health crisis as families have grappled with not only how to respond to medical, food, housing needs, but turning their homes into vehicles for children's remote education, which had its own challenges in terms of structures at home, and even parenting, new types of parenting skills. You can go ahead if you would, Bob. So our priorities for the upcoming year really are a representation of what I would call kind of enduring commitments, values, or in one or two cases, maybe building upon something that's already in place in our efforts to emerge, or as we do emerge from the health crisis. We, of course, will continue to expand on academic and emotional supports for both classified and non-classified students. For example, 2 years ago, we added the ESP program at MHS, and this year we'll add the Learning Hub at Homix. Each provides an intricate, really, combination of social, emotional, and academic support. ESP was in response to school avoidance and emotional vulnerabilities, and the Learning Hub, although we might change that name, will be in response to the significant impact of COVID-19 on some identified young adolescents' engagement in school. Our district-wide crisis team and building staff have been working diligently to think about what do students need to reacclimate to full-day schooling. Of course, we've been working for September, but now we're doubling up for April 8th. An example might be, what you historically might call a fall orientation is now turning into the idea of a spring orientation for kids that have never really experienced that full school before, since they transitioned from elementary to middle school or middle school to 9th grade. And also, how can we use the summer months to build community that normally we're able to do in the fall of a school year? Our special educators and our psychologists are really committed to continuing to work with their gen ed, general education colleagues to meet students where they are and develop plans that monitor their social, emotional, and their academic progress, whether that be through structures at the building level, like the instructional support team and the development of student support plans that involve the merging of student support services staff with some of the literacy coaches and other key players that Annie was just talking about. Or whether it's through 504 accommodation plans or IEPs through special education. And we need to, and we will continue to encourage parents to be active participants in the development of those learning plans. Again, both inside and outside special education. And finally, we maintain a commitment to providing special ed services in the least restrictive and most inclusive environment that's possible. In a little while, our directors of special education, Jennifer Monaco and Alex Casabona, will share data that really reflects that commitment. And we're quite proud of it. And suffice it to say, I'm particularly proud of this department. So we can go ahead and we'll first start with the groups of staff members that work with all of our secondary students. So the guidance line includes the salaries of our 14 secondary guidance counselors. Also in there, which Dr. Shaps will talk about in a moment, is the funding for the district equity team and our annual contract, I believe, of $70,000 with the Larchmont Mamaroneck Community Counseling Center. And just a reminder that our guidance counselors are involved in every aspect of students' education, as well as serving as an important homeschool liaison of sorts. They do everything from course scheduling, educational planning, leading counseling groups, writing college recommendations, to monitoring and supporting every student's path on path to graduation in the end. And they do a fantastic job. If you look at our graduation rates, it certainly supports that. The decrease in this line represents the shift from in Homix counseling when one of the counselors earlier this year moved into the director of student life position. Any questions about that slide before?
If I can just add, the net decrease, just adding to that, is really a result of adding resources for the district equity team. And as Dr. Mazzoni said, the reduction in counseling guidance staff that represents the reduction by $7,800. Okay.
So just to that end, in regards to the district equity team, I believe it's 75K that's budgeted, yes?
Yes, I'm going to get that in a second, the next slide.
Excellent, okay.
As Dr. Mazzoni mentioned, right now, at least sitting in this area of the budget under the 2810 code is a recommendation for a new expenditure request. This is the funding, $75,000 for the district equity team. This funding would support the district's equity multi-year strategic plan, goal and objectives initiatives, and really, I'd say support the base of this program model, that is the committee's model. So embedded in the request is resources for an ongoing partnership with a DE consultant, April Francis Taylor. April certainly has, in her role as facilitator, been a lot helping us organize and launch the DET. We certainly help us to shepherd the development of this multi-year strategic plan, and certainly work with our two co-coordinators of district equity issues to kind of advance the agenda of the district equity team and plan all our initiatives. So that's included in the request. We, as part of the district equity multi-year strategic plan, in the first year initiatives, we've identified a commitment to contract with an external auditor. We're developing right now a framework to evaluate potential third-party auditors to engage in some component of an external audit in combination with the staffing in the district. So the initial work is to provide for the funding for a potential external auditor, and also to develop the criteria and then go through the process to identify potential partners and then move forward to engage in a level of outside auditing of the district. So more to be discussed there. As part of the structure of the DET, we have various groups. So we have the expanded DET committee, which is representative stakeholders, not only of staff, of organizations in our parent community, but we're also looking to that second layer of sustained work, and that is to establish building level equity team leaders and committees. The idea here is to maintain in every building a leadership group that have right now organically began in various schools to really shepherd and facilitate building level equity efforts and focus. And so there are stipends there to support the expansion of what I would say building level equity team leaders and team members. There's a component of this budget to focus on professional development, ability to bring in outside experts, speakers, to focus on our collective professional development. And then the final component of this budget is the stipends for the co-coordinators to really, again, lead this work. I would say from the time period of the summer up until this point, our two coordinators, Leon White and assistant principal Jenny Rodriguez, have really worked tirelessly with, I would say, April Francis Taylor to kind of keep the momentum, make sure that this large group is productive and is really guiding that work. So we're continuing with that. So that's a description of the expenditures that we're asking for. I point to in this slide, as part of the work over the summer curriculum, and this is an example of connecting summer curriculum work and teachers, we've expended that and for the work in connecting with April Francis Taylor's facilitator, $32,000 in the current budget to really get us where we're at, to develop the multi-year strategic plan, to organize the activities, and we want to continue through the expenditure request of $75,000 to launch this. Any questions?
Bob, just looking at the building level equity team leaders, and I see that's where a lot of the money's going. Could you elaborate a little bit more on your vision of what that role is going to be and how they might interact and work within and affect positive change in terms of systems and structures that we have in place that might need to be adjusted?
So I would say that, spent a lot of time talking with April through her experience leading this work in several districts, and now as I would say, regional leader and actually statewide in terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion work. And we all agree that embedding the sustained professional development and leadership within the system is the best way to affect change. And I would say several surrounding districts have invested resources in outside consultants. They come in, they evaluate, they provide a litany of recommendations, they go off. And the ability for the system to build capacity, to really focus on sustained and integrated work is in some ways compromised because you're not having this leadership group. So this model really is built on what I would say is the ground up experience of focus on leadership teams to continue this work, to sustain it over the course of the year, to focus in specifically on initiatives that are connected to the needs of staff, students, and families, and to align that work with the broader vision of the DET committee. So I support this. I think I would say that April, in conceptualizing this and recommending this plan, has a broad vision of how this has worked well in districts who have been committed to this work for many, many years. And so that's really the basis for investing initially in the stipends leadership positions.
Thank you for that, Bob. And that's an excellent segue into social work services in terms of serving the needs of families and students.
Okay.
Actually, it's health services.
That's actually not the next slide. I was ahead of you. Okay, sorry about that, Nora.
It's coming up, Rena. It's coming
So
up.
much for my little smooth segue. I think I should. Okay.
That's okay. This is an important line too. Obviously, the health line. So this is the line of the budget that includes our 8 school nurses and 6 full-time health aides, 1 for each of our 6 schools. It also includes 3 non-public school nurses, because remember, it's not only our 6 schools, but we have actually 5 non-public schools within our location of our district, and we do support 3 of their school nurses. You'll remember that last year, we also added a second nurse at the Homics, and it's relevant to note that our nursing coordinator, Dina Murphy, is actually one of the 2 nurses at MHS. So all of our nurses have certainly, earned their pay this year. They work very, very closely with our district physician, Ann England, and that really has been critical in our day-to-day operations. The nurses oversee all the health mandates pre-COVID and during the health crisis. And they also serve as an incredible medical resource for families and for staff as they have questions in their daily work. So this year, we're recommending the addition of a second bilingual school nurse at Mamaroneck Avenue School. And I think we would all agree that the diverse needs of this elementary school, already recognized, became even more apparent during the health crisis. Although maybe perhaps they have a similar number of students or caseload, so to speak, to some of our other elementary schools, the Mamaroneck Avenue nurse really has a much greater number of daily points of contact in this school, more so than any of the other school nurses. And we do keep track of those things, so we know it for a fact. In addition, all 5 of our elementary special classes are at Mamaroneck Avenue School, and those students have greater medical and physical needs. And Nurse Lucas really works side by side in almost every case she deals with the bilingual school psychologist and bilingual social worker in order to both share and obtain information that's essential to monitoring the medical needs and the status of students and families. So I feel very strongly that this is a needed recommendation, and I hope the community will support it. And we specifically are looking to hire a bilingual school nurse team.
This also includes, if I can just add to it, funding to the expanded, I would say, responsibilities of district physician, Dr. Ann England, who has been incredible in terms of her commitment in her role of district physician. She has gone well beyond what I would say the traditional roles and responsibility around a district physician position, and has been instrumental in helping us develop protocols for health and safety, and continues to be a key part of our health leadership team, and we rely on her professional knowledge. And so that's part of this budget as well. And she has, certainly been invaluable. Any questions about health services?
Right, because that does represent an increase in the budget, and that would be for the salary of the nurse as well as the increase in Dr. England's contract. Okay, so on to psychologists. So in our district, just as a reminder, we have 5 elementary and 7 secondary psychologists, and we also have 1 non-public school psychologist. We have 2 psychologists that are actually in special assignments, one being Cindy McCain, who does our out-of-district placements, as well as some other roles within the district, and the other being Kristen Narita, who does our preschool services. 2 of our programs, ESP, which I spoke about earlier, and TASK, both at MHS and HOMICS, have dedicated psychologists for those programs which cross all grade levels in their schools. Our psychologists, are highly trained. They have been DBT trained. They're running DBT and CBT groups in the schools. They participate in all types of educational plans to support students' school performance. They chair CSEs. They conduct evaluations for the CSE, and they support our students just through daily building-based work, such as lunch bunch groups, etc. The increase in this line is really only a result of reallocation of IDEA funds between the psychologists and the social work lines. Sylvia, do you want to add anything to that, or maybe not? Okay, but that's what it's from. So some parts of individual salaries are paid for through the IDEA grant, and this is just a shift. It's a paperwork shift, so to speak. Okay, any questions about psychologists? Okay, Rena, here we are. On to social workers. So the role of our 6 social workers is to help families obtain the resources brought on by trauma, socioeconomics, and other crises. Our district-wide social worker added last year, Lisa Garcia, has been working to systematize procedures for identifying and uncovering students and families in need. She's been collaborating and interacting with community organizations to bring capacity and resources to the district, as well as introduce new practices, such as family wraparound meetings, where psychologists from families, instead of working by building, there'll be one meeting, a wraparound meeting, where the parent comes with the social workers who have worked with their children and talk about their family and what kind of resources would better support the whole family. And I've had the opportunity to observe some of those meetings. I needed Liz Paras to translate for me, but they come out with a written plan and follow through steps for the families, and it's been very well received. Lisi recently has also introduced the idea of a family academy into our school community. We've been working on this with the district-wide crisis team that I talked about before. And we will start with the addition of before and after school counseling for families, but we look to further develop it where we can offer workshops for families around different areas of need, similar to how we've seen in other diverse communities such as Ossining, and we have been collaborating with them. Currently, we have social workers assigned to each of our schools. They actively counsel, participate in crisis team meetings, respond to food and housing insecurities, and they conduct home visits, even outdoors during the health crisis. So again, this line reflects the interchange of IDEA funds that I mentioned in the previous category with social workers and psychologists. Any questions there?
Yeah, Nora, I have a question. So what accounts for the reduction? So the reduction, hold on, I have to put my glasses on again. The reduction in the instructional salary line for the social workers, that accounts for the whole 79,000? Where,
So,
Okay, hold on, let me get with you.
Nora, do you want me to answer that?
Sure, that'd be great while I'm
Okay,
flipping
so I'm
through
just turning
pages.
to the page, but the reduction in this salary, in the salaries here is somewhat offset by the increase in the 2820. It's just how we're allocating the funds to the IDEA grants. We wanted them in a specific school, and the state wanted them in a specific way. So the two functions, the social work and psychologist, those offset one another significantly.
You said that much better than I tried to do, Sylvia.
No.
so there's no reduction in any
No.
sort of staff?
It's
No,
just
there's no
a
reduction
swap.
in people and FTEs.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to turn to the services which solely fall under the category of programs for students with disabilities. And our directors of special education, Jennifer Monaco and Alex Casabona, will provide you with some current data that really supports the need for all programs that are covered in this budget line.
Okay.
So I'll turn it to Jen.
Okay, thanks, Nora. Good evening, everyone. So I have the opportunity to highlight the last component of the student support budget line, which is the programs for students with disabilities, and that's 2250 is the code there. And if you look at the numbers here, the proposed budget is relatively stable and actually is a slight decrease than in previous years. When we think about this budget, we always have, in terms of special education, there is always a variable piece to this because we create and give services and create programs based on student need. So we change, obviously, along with our kids. What's interesting about some highlights around our special education and our students with disabilities is that our classification rate continues to be, and this is initial classification, within that 12% range. And this has been consistent over quite a few years. And our evaluation team has helped us maintain that initial classification rate and also bring consistency through that evaluation lens. Our K through 12 student population, we have a 15% classification rate. And so you might ask, so, where is and why is there a difference in those percentages? What we have noticed the last several years is we have many more students moving into district with IEPs. So those students are already classified and joining our school district. So we've been looking at those numbers carefully over the past several years. And we believe that has a very good big reason for that. As Nora mentioned earlier, that we really try and maintain our kids integrated into the general education setting, and 80% of our students who have disabilities are integrated, and those services are delivered in a general education setting. Within this program, the budget, we continue to provide a full continuum of services that we currently have, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And then I'd just like to highlight that we do have a very small and continue to have a very small percentage of placing students out of district. And that's for students who require a program kind of above and beyond what we have in district. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that percentage is less than 4%, a very small number. Finally, as Nora again mentioned earlier in one of her more general slides, that we are the district or location, meaning that we provide services and evaluations for our non-public schools, and we have 5 of them in our district. Okay, so that sort of falls into our program line as well. And when we talk about students with disabilities, they fall into kind of 2 larger categories. One are students with 504 plans, and those who require special education services through an IEP, an individualized education plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Alex Casabona, our second director of special education, to talk.
Jennifer, why don't you hold on and see if the board has any questions before we move forward. The other thing I just wanted to pop in and just emphasize so it was clear. So the difference between the 12% and the 15%. So 15% of our entire Mamaroneck student population is classified as having a disability. That's a very reasonable percentage if you look at districts around us that are that or much higher. It still hovers around that, high 700 kid rate. That really hasn't changed. The 12% range of kids who are referred to special education, right? Approximately between 12 and 13% are classified, is quite admirable, quite honestly. And it's not because we've tried to deny services, but because we've gotten and stayed much more consistent in that analytical lens between the buildings. So I just want to make sure that that was straight. Does anybody from the board have questions for Jennifer or for myself before we turn to Alex?
I have a question. So the budget to budget decrease is allocable to the reduction in teacher aides. It appears that way through, in the budget book. Now, my question is, as we go through the year, I know there's always an adjustment in the number of aides we need to hire. So if we find that we need additional aides, because this would be something, an aide under this budget line would be an aide that's mandated. So, correct, Nora? So,
yes.
So how does that square when we need more aides than what's currently, or if we need more aides than what's currently in the budget line?
Well, I would say first thing is, what is the purpose of the aide, right? The majority of our aides are not one-to-one aides. They're what we call enhanced staffing. So we would first look and see in the environment that the student's in, are the needs they have for that extra staffing one that can be shared with another student, right? So we would look there first, how to kind of group kids. If it's a one-on-one situation, quite honestly, mandated services are mandated, but the one-on-one aides that we have are around health and safety. They're not aides who are reminding kids to pay attention, that kind of thing. We generally don't add a great deal of one-on-one aides during the course of the school year. But the expenses in special education are malleable as the year goes on. Tuition rates change, kids have different needs, and that's what we're here for. So that's a guarantee I can't make, but I feel like if you look at what we've done over the number of last 4 or 5 years, there has not been significant increases past our projections. Maybe a couple of aides, but that's insignificant in my mind when we talk about this budget.
Nora, I mean, as you know better than anybody, we do have contingencies in this budget. We know that at any time a child can move into the district, with a price tag of $100,000 very easily. So this is one of the few areas of the budget where we do carry contingency.
Thank you, Sylvia. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry to interject there, Jennifer. So we're going to turn to Alex now, who's going to talk about the two subsets of students with disabilities.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I'll start with this slide that represents our students who have 504 accommodation plans. So this slide actually details those students who are receiving supports in terms of accommodations and modifications, but do not necessarily require a formal IEP or direct special education supports. You'll see here that we have numbers for the 18-19, 19-20, and 2021 school year. And what you'll notice, the first thing I want to call everyone's attention to is that the numbers are fairly stable over the 3-year period, with slight decreases at the elementary level and middle school level, and a slight increase at the high school level. Reasons for this trend can be attributed to the fact that as the work gets denser and more complex, students tend to present with more need for accommodations, as well as adolescents enter into high school age, they may be more prone to display things that may have been underlying disabilities at some point, like anxiety or other stress-related disorders, or particular physical conditions may be impacting them and their ability to access the curriculum a little more when they're older. If you see here in terms of the elementary buildings, fairly stable for all and a slight decrease. In terms of any difference between particular elementary schools, one thing that we consider is that the actual physical space and configuration of a building may impact the need for a 504 accommodation plan among students, because many students have 504s for physical accommodations, so that they could navigate the building and the classroom. 504 plans can also be for students who don't have learning disabilities, but may have hearing or vision impairments and then require accommodations like repeated information or perhaps amplification tools or some sort of assistive technology device to support them in accessing the curriculum. So if we now move to the next slide, we'll see how that compares to our students who are classified. So
Alex, can I just add one thing before you go on?
Sure.
I'm sorry to interject, but I think this is important since this is a budget meeting and somebody might say, well, why even show that slide if it doesn't impact staffing that you're asking for or staffing that why would you even share that? Well, one, I think it's not about staffing, it's about impact. So you're talking about a department who there might only be a certain amount of kids that are classified, but there's many more that impacted their jobs on a daily basis. So 100 students could have mandated counseling, but 400 students could be receiving counseling. So 504 plans affect guidance counselors, social workers. They can have counseling on them. They can have consults on them. They impact general education teachers who are in classrooms that are helping modify tests, special ed teachers that are helping them. So it's about sheer volume of impact that Alex is trying to stress with you, because it's why the department is so busy and so valuable at the same time. Sorry, Alex, I'll try to stop interrupting you guys.
Thank you. No, good point.
About the budget.
Good point. So this next slide depicts our rate of classification. Per IDEA, which is the federal legislation that governs special education, there are 13 categories of disability that children can be classified under, and you'll see those listed here on the left side of the slide. So what you'll see that in terms of our total numbers, again, remaining fairly stable and increasing relative to the increase in enrollment overall within the district. You'll note that you'll see a rise in autism, as well as in students with learning disabilities. One thing that this can be attributed to is the fact that we hear from many families that they're actually moving to Mamaroneck because they've heard that the programs are so good. So that we can attribute an increase in those two particular disability categories, primarily to that. You'll also see that there's a consistent increase in students that are classified as other health impaired. And we find that this year that is primarily directly related to the pandemic, but also pre-COVID and pre-pandemic, it really relates to social emotional conditions like anxiety and other stress-related disorders that are just on the rise nationwide, even prior to the pandemic. You'll see that this includes our preschool students, our totals. However, preschool students are not included within the 13 categories because preschoolers are classified simply as preschoolers with a disability. We don't necessarily need to break them into one of the 13 categories. So does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I will turn it over to Jen.
I'll add one more thing, Alex.
Sure.
So it's 947 kids total for this year. This is operational data. By the end of the year, the preschool numbers could be at 200. It's 3 and 4 year olds. It's based on age and developmental cycles. But the other thing of note is this includes children who are parentally placed outside the district, who are in non-public schools but registered in our district, and also who the small percentage of kids that are placed by the district in out-of-district programs. So they're not all in our 6 schools, but they're all our students. Okay.
I won't ask how many CSEs and CPSEs you guys are going to be doing. I imagine
Well,
that.
we do 947 annual reviews, and probably 30% of our kids have at least one requested review during the year. Thousands is actually really the answer. But it's what we need to do, and it's what we should be doing.
Absolutely. Okay, so this slide I think is pretty self-explanatory, but it does outline the continuum of services that we offer here in Mamaroneck and are recognized by the New York State regulations. We always, as mentioned, we want, and our commitment is to keep kids in the most inclusive and least restrictive environment. So starting off with related services, OT, PT, speech, some students simply get one or two or multiple related services, and going a little bit more restrictive down, sort of, if you look at that arrow down the continuum, and offering a variety of programs. Again, as mentioned earlier, 80% of our kids' services are delivered in the general ed classes, and we're really proud of that. And again, we do have a number of special classes, and we have students who are placed out of district that I'll talk a little bit more in detail on the next couple of slides. But I thought I would just pause there and see if there's any questions or related to the continuum of services. Okay. Move to the next slide. Thank you. So when we have students whose needs require, their educational, social, emotional needs require, their vulnerabilities and their needs are kind of beyond of what we can provide in our 6 schools, we will work, and Cindy McCain oversees our out-of-district placements and students, and we have 2 paths that we can take. One is an out-of-district New York State approved private schools, and this slide represents the number of students through the last 4 years that we have placed in one of these New York State approved private schools. And you can see the numbers relatively stable, actually a bit on the downtrend, as we continue to try and keep kids in our district, in their home district. And I think, as Nora mentioned earlier, the ESP program, which I think we're in our 2nd or our 3rd year, has really helped us, keep kids in district. So that's one example. But I think the good news is that, that is on the downward trend. And so we have our second option when we have students whose needs and have greater vulnerabilities. We have a second option, and that's our BOCES placements. But that is the next slide. But I'll pause here just to see if there's any questions pertaining to the New York State approved private schools.
And just remember that, just for the board's information, not all private school placements have the same tuition. And not all private school placements offer the same type of supports for kids. So our obligation is to place the student in the most appropriate placement for them. We don't have any control over the cost. We're only trying to match the student's needs to the school, and the school actually has to accept them. It's not like we can just say, we want this student to go here. It's kind of like applying for college. You have to send out all the paperwork and they ultimately decide.
Actually, just a quick question, Sylvia, on that. Sylvia, does this take into account, the cost shift of the, what was it, 18%?
No,
Okay.
that's for the summer program, and that's reflected. It'll be in, it's not in tonight's part of the budget. It'll be when we go over admin. That's in the transfer to special aid fund. You'll see that there was a significant increase in that code, and that's to make up for the state shifting part of its burden to the districts.
If that goes through. Okay, thank
Right.
you.
And Nora and Sylvia, so then I guess the request to ask for an average number for per student for state approved out of district private school would be, it just varies.
Any place from 22,000 to 180,000. It depends on the needs of the
on the
students
need of the student.
and
Yeah.
the kind of support they need and the amount of support they need.
And
So we have
add to
students-
that the transportation.
Right. We have students who are so medically involved that they are in wheelchairs, need medical, nursing on a daily basis, need adapted equipment, and need to be in a specialized school and need transportation to get there. And then they have speech 4 times a week. They have OT, they have PT,
God bless. But this number here includes transportation.
no.
No, it
No, it
doesn't.
does
These are
not.
tuitions.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I keep going back to saying the budget is a big budget, but the amount of kids that benefit from this budget are equal to a school. We're talking about 750 kids. That's the size of an elementary school. So you have to kind of think of it, in terms of those,
Thank you for
placement.
framing it that way. Yeah, that gives you a better sense of the picture. Thank you.
And to give you a perspective, the number of kids that are in out-of-district placements are only 35 kids out of 900. It's really, anyhow, go ahead, Jen. I'm sorry, you were going to talk about BOCES.
Sure. The next piece is BOCES programs, which are very expensive overall. And if we look at the number of students over the 4 years, there is an increase in students being placed in BOCES programs. And that increase in number is what we're seeing, the need for more therapeutic placements. Again, for those students who have extreme emotional vulnerabilities in combination with learning challenges. So again, overall, very low number. If you look at, as Nora mentioned, 35 students needing to go out of district, but this is sort of second piece to students who go out of district. And obviously it was all based on need and matching the program with the student need. So again, there was a slight increase over the 4 years, relatively stable the last couple of years, but again, really based on more so the therapeutic placements that are needed.
Mostly secondary students too, in this category, not all, but mostly. And the other thing is because we're not a component district of BOCES, we actually pay more for tuition than component districts do.
So I'll turn it back to Nora now.
So yeah, thank you, Jen. So really, in summary, this year's budget for student support services supports the following things with what I would say is a very minimal increase compared to what we've needed some other years. There'll be a learning hub program at the middle school for both classified and non-classified kids, offering daily counseling and academic support. We anticipate that about 30 students will receive this support, and we'll work very carefully to make sure that the type of support they need is more in a cohort-like model so that we can do some intense work. And it's a kind of program that they then can, maybe some kids will only need for a quarter, some might need for 2 quarters, some might need for a year. So more than 30 kids will benefit as the year goes on, but they will rotate in and out at different intervals. We're hoping to have a bilingual nurse at Mamaroneck Avenue School. We're actively looking already because we really believe this is going to come through, and we hope the board will support it in the community. Just as a financially responsible, move on our part, I just wanted to let you know that all of our consultants, you've heard me in the past talk about our consultant line that has our district psychiatrists in it, has the majority of our occupational therapists, except for one, other variety of consultants that we use to meet kids' needs. What we're looking to do in the upcoming year is to shift from one consultant position to a district-wide occupational therapist. We already have one, Paloma Suervas. And what we're finding is that if we can do that, then we're not paying for every little thing except for direct service. So right now for our consultant OTs, every time they do an email, every time they call a parent, we're paying, their hourly rate. So we're going to try to move in a second district-wide occupational therapist and see if it's much more efficient way of meeting kids' services. OTs are hard to find, so we have to do it, kind of slowly and carefully. There's a small increase in out-of-district tuition consultant expenses that we don't have any control over, about $120,000, I think, total budget increase. We will continue with the bi-weekly meetings of the district-wide crisis team that was started in March 2020 and has been working hard in response to the pandemic, but also now in the response to reacclimating kids to school. And as I mentioned, we are working on the development of what we're calling a family academy model, and we're collaborating with OSNING at present in generating those ideas. And we're working with our outside community agencies to provide before and after school family counseling next school year. And we'll always continue to try to keep the majority of our kids in district for their mandated services. Right now we're at 96%. It would be great if we could do better than that, but I'm proud that that's where we are. We have a commitment to continue to provide a full continuum of services within the district. And as cohorts of need come up, we'll look to expand in different types of programming. Lisa Garcia will be able to capitalize on that position this year because, we have a healthy full school year coming up, and she'll continue to help our social work department expand its outreach and become more systematic in the way they determine families' needs. And the evaluation team will keep our teachers and therapists in the classroom more, optimizing instructional time by doing all the initial referrals for the district. They've done 75 initial referrals already this year from soup to nuts. So that's a lot of time that their colleagues would have been out of the classroom. So I'd like to thank the community. I know it's a big budget, but our kids need it and they do well with it. And I appreciate your support always. Any questions before we move on?
No, I just want to say thank you for this and thank you for all the work in trying to meet kids where they are and to get them where they need to be. So
I do want to stress that it's we don't work in isolation from curriculum instruction. Annie and I have a strong partnership and all of our staff work together. So, RTI providers come to CSEs, special ed teachers help general education students that aren't classified. So it's a real partnership and that's what a district is.
And I just want to add that and say that, again, when I started the presentation, we talked about the addition of programs and services, and it has been the commitment to, certainly in this district, to value least restrictive environment, try to get as many students to learn in their home school. And we made adjustments over the years, but we've developed programs. And I think that speaks to the consistency now around budget. Because we're investing in programs within school, trying to maximize the opportunity for kids to stay and learn, and investing in co-teach model, expanded models, and consistency across the continuum of services as well. So there's a lot to talk about, and we'll continue to do that. So I wanted to see if we could, and thank you. Yes, Rena, you're about to say something.
No, I was going to say that also in the budget I saw we're also there's the addition of an AIS position.
Yes, I referred to that on the original budget presentation, and thank you for bringing that up. That when I alluded to the 2.4 FTE additional programs in regular school, that one position was the middle school AIS position, academic support position. In the budget, and so that's one FTE, the 2.4, and that's also to target reading support, I believe, and just the increasing number of students in the middle school who are eligible for AIS support. Thank you. I was given the time and where we are in the presentation, I was going to turn to Barry, just jump ahead. I want to be mindful of, she's at the end of the presentation, then I'll come back to the focus on co-curricular activities. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to advance the slides to interscholastic sports and come back to co-curricular activities. And so Barry, I hope you're with us. I'd say as an introduction, certainly I appreciate Barry Suman's leadership. Again, similar to Dean Madden, this has been an up and down, twist and turn circumstance around thinking about how we would move forward with interscholastic sports, considering how we work at the middle school level to engage our students in the fall around intramurals. It's been a lot of legwork around safety protocols, trying to create the greatest opportunity for students to have some normalcy around their entire educational experience. Athletics is a big part of our community, of our students' experiences. We're very proud of the breadth of opportunities. And so with that, I'm hoping that Barry, you can take us through the interscholastic athletic budget, health and PE, and highlight some statistics around participation.
Hi, thank you. You do all the magic work, right? I just have to tell you when?
Yes.
Okay, great. So now that everyone's been here for so long, whatever I want, right? That's how this works. When you go last, you get whatever you want. No, I want to thank everybody, the board, all central staff. You guys have been really supportive. All of our jobs have been so different this year. And obviously phys ed has been different at every level, and interscholastic athletics has been a lot more work, just different kind of work. But I can 100% say to any of you and any board member who wants to come, you can be my guest because there's only 2 spectators per athlete participant, but I would be happy to have any of you to come and see these kids in their element and to see what I like to call the smiling eyes, because that's the part you see. They're playing all their sports in their masks the same way. They're wearing their masks all day long, but there is like a really vibrant life behind what they're doing. And you could see the sense of normalcy when they're on the fields and in those venues. So as I start, I just want to say that interscholastic athletics, health and PE are really intertwined because, you know, some things are separate, like the phys ed salaries are separate from this. This is, you know, the athletic salaries, but, you know, any facility enhancements, any of our contracted services, they cross athletics and health. And I will explain more what I mean by that. So I want to just get into like a little bit of a kind of scope of what our athletic program entails. So next slide, Bob. Yeah, so this has a lot of information on it. I'm not going to read to you because you guys have been reading all night. The things I would like to highlight so people understand the kind of the size of our athletic program. Between 7th through 12th grade, we have 75 teams. We are forever trying to stay current and utilize resources that are out there. So the last couple of years, we've been what I call like an emerging girls golf team. So we have the ability, we have an amazing boys golf coach, Adam Rizzuti. I can give him a shout out. And we have just kind of been growing the program a little bit. And then there's grant money out there for unified basketball to kind of start it. And that actually ties into kind of our special education program. So I wrote the grant to, you know, support it and see if we have kind of any traction to keep it running. It's just the sport of basketball. It won't conflict with Special Olympics. Nor I would never do that. We're one of the founding schools for Special Olympics in our area, but it's just another opportunity, another way to enhance athletic experience for some of our special ed kids. And actually the unified program is a combination of special ed kids with regular ed peers that act as coaches. The breakdown of our teams by gender, by season, and then just like an overall arching so people kind of understand we are as close as you can be pretty much with numbers of teams. So we have 35 boys teams, 39 girls teams, and then the 2 co-ed experiences with the special ed and hopefully the unified basketball. Those are the breakdown by season, fall, winter, and spring. And then by levels, how many sports teams are offered at the Homix versus how many sports teams are offered at the high school. Yeah, that covers kind of the data points of all of that. And then to just kind of go deeper into it, I broke down for each. Bob, you want to go to the next one? These are all the sports we offer. And again, I'm not going to bore you by reading to you, but I guess the point I want you to understand is we do look at trends and where, you know, there is interest. And this is a super, super extensive list because we offer everything. And they are fully subscribed. It's not like we offer something and like nobody's doing it. And then we're running, you know, we're cutting kids from other teams. Everything we offer is pretty much fully subscribed. Most of the running sports are no cut, you know, in a year other than COVID. We can do that and support that and work within our budget. At the state level, there are only 4 sports that we don't offer as a school district. And again, it's all an interest-based. We don't offer boys volleyball, and that's new. The girls ice hockey we're getting involved in, and similar to the girls golf, we're looking to, you know, emerge, but not support our own programs, you know, just have a little piece of that. The programs we don't offer: boys volleyball, gymnastics, riflery, and badminton. Everything else that's offered at the state level, only Long Island, I think, still has badminton. Riflery is primarily the upstate sports where they can do those things, like up near the Canadian border. And it's super comprehensive. And like you could see the number of boys and the number of girls teams. And then I did a similar slide for Homix. So what does that translate to in the area of athletics? So over time, for Sylvia, because she makes me think, which is good, I've been keeping track of participation. What does that look like for our district? So over the last 3 years, I mean, again, obviously allowing for some flexibility around COVID, over the last 3 years at the high school level, we've had about 1,500 kids sign up for sports over the course of the year. So there's 3 seasons normally in a normal year. This is not a normal year. There's 4 seasons this year, but in a regular year, there's 3 seasons, fall, winter, and spring. And over the course of 3 seasons, we have about 1,500 kids register, and we have about 1,200 kids participate. So what does that mean? That means we do cut some kids because certain sports cannot have the number of kids that want to play. There's not enough spots, there's not enough field space. But there are also some kids that sign up and realize that the commitment is too great, and you know they may not be a part of it, that attrition level. But what that does, when you break those numbers out and you actually look at the between 1,100 and 1,200 kids over the last 3 years that have participated in high school athletics, it winds up being about 30% of our population, our high school population, participates in at least one sport. The number of 1,500 of a school of 1,700 is because many kids play 2, few kids play 3. A lot of the running sport kids are 3-season sports, but the 3-sport athlete is kind of like a unicorn, you know, to do it at as high a level as some of our kids do. They can do 2 really well. Interestingly enough, we haven't gotten to the 4th season yet, but looking at, now I have a full snapshot of fall because fall was split into 2 seasons. And I was kind of interested in seeing if we had more kids coming out and playing because of this unique situation where a kid could play soccer or run cross country in the fall and now play football, or a girl could play soccer, field hockey, tennis, any of the sports that were offered in the fall and now play volleyball or swim. And we did have a higher number of registrations. So usually we're right around the 550 mark, and we were at about 610. So there is a little bit of an increase in the fall season by splitting it into the 2 seasons. I thought that was an interesting piece of data. I thought the numbers would be down because of COVID. We had to limit roster size with the running sports. So that was kind of some of the feedback I was getting. Within the athletic budget, Bob, can you go back to my first slide? So to summarize the athletic budget, there's salaries for interscholastic sports, program expenditures, contracted services, and professional development. So that means like the athletic expenditures are things like, and safety are things like padding in the gym, facility rentals fees. So anything from the ice rink to the fields behind Hommocks to Flint Park, we rent those, and some of it's used for PE and some of it's used for athletics. Repairs fall under this category. So that's anything from scoreboard to fitness center equipment to contracted services such as the inspection and maintenance of the high ropes course, professional development opportunities for teachers and coaches. And Annie reminded me about our participation in the PE consortium. We were one of the founding schools 18 years ago. Training, certification classes, including lifeguarding, CPR, first aid. This budget includes purchase of safety equipment. We're going to phase in the wall padding in the gyms, really needs to be updated for safety purposes. Software expenses for athletic team registration, team scheduling applications, coaching resources for filming and breaking down film. And most recently, my newest skill is live streaming games without fans. We've figured out how to live stream games, which also ties into our budget because Mike Sammartano and Jesse Dancy and Elena Almanzino have been really valuable resources. Transportation is on the outside of this. It's not as included, but it has been a cost increase over time. It's staying flat for this year. BOCES costs. So, you know, everybody talks about being a member school or not a member school. Well, with athletics, that doesn't come into play. It's being a participant is you pay office fees because they do all of our scheduling with they do the majority of our scheduling with other schools and put us in, you know, leagues to compete and assign the officials, and officials get paid out of the BOCES line. So those were some things that I didn't have control over that increased in costs. They settled contracts with officials within the last year. And it wasn't a straight % increase because what they did was a varsity official in any sport gets the same fee and then the JV officials all get the same fees where they used to be varying. Certain sports got more than other sports. Everything is like the same fee now. So some things didn't go up at all and other things went up significantly. And now there'll be % increases each year.
Barry, the bulk of the increase in this area is allocable to the addition of the strength and conditioning coach and the materials and supplies that you were just talking about.
Yes. Yeah. So the strength and conditioning coach, why was I looking at that? We have that great facility. Our kids in general, as a broad brush statement, have a lot of sports, the opportunity for a lot of sports specific training. But as far as like the balance and the development of their body in strength, flexibility, endurance, mobility, these kids they have a lot of overuse injuries, and the strength and conditioning coach wasn't necessarily to be a basketball strength and conditioning coach or a football strength and conditioning coach. It was really looking at the overall development of our athletes as being just more balanced athletes, prevention of injury, teaching lifelong fitness and movement skills, self-esteem, and the idea that it wasn't just going to be for kids while they're on sports teams, that it would be open to kids who may not necessarily be athletes, but just want an opportunity to train. So that was my initial.
Got it. And that's a contracted service, Sylvia?
That is a contracted service.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted.
So that would be off an RFP. But the more that I continue to look at it and dig deeper into the strength and conditioning coach and not knowing where we're going to be a year from now. There has also been the interest to add assistant coaches for the varsity level team sports and possibly phase them in at a similar rate. But what that would do is it would move the money out of contractual into salaried and try and add, but it would be a 3-year commitment to try and get those in for 3 seasons.
So in conversations with Barry in terms of priorities, the one priority is this focus on strength and conditioning similar to districts in our area. Similar to that, the board knows that over the last several years, we've raised the issue of the reestablishing assistant coaches for varsity programs. And the primary consideration of that is health and safety. We've had situations with one coach where we'd have to have a game stoppage if we had an injury because we really had to either provide an assistant AD who's on site in terms of competition to deal with an injury and not be able to stop the game. And so we are, I would say, in similar sized schools or just across the county, and we've shared this information with the board, the only district that is not providing assistant coach and stipends at the varsity level. And so our discussions to say, could we look at these priorities, these dueling priorities within the scope of limited budget and decide whether to start to phase in assistant coaches. These coaches would be negotiated with the MTA in terms of cost of these positions, but it would be to reestablish this over time to provide for the coaching supports that would allow us to certainly operate in a safe manner as well. We have a lot of volunteers, but it's really designating an assistant coach at the varsity level to ensure that we have the supervision that's necessary to compete and also the ratio of adults to students. So that's really a topic of consideration of taking the equal dollar value that's in this budget for one of the 2 priorities.
I figure there'll be questions now.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for anything that I've presented?
Is there any implication of making that decision or deferring that decision in terms of other follow-on costs, whether it's stipends or the contract for a strength and conditioning coach, or is it truly an equivalent cost?
It's for next year, it would be an equivalent cost to phase it in. However, if adding the stipends would be an increase each year for 3 years, if we were going to get the assistants for all varsity teams.
Right. And to that end, Rob, in looking at this and thinking how we can get to that place where we have assistant coaches established in all 3 seasons, it was the idea of phasing this over multiple years, that it couldn't be a one time. When these were removed from the budget prior to my arrival, getting this back, that has been something that we've considered. It's the idea that we'd phase it in so that the impact to the budget would be minimal over time.
The other piece with the strength and conditioning coach is, I mean, the facility is amazing, but if we can't utilize the facility to its capacity, to earmark the money for that in a year where we're not going to know how much we can use the space. I mean, we're still going to probably be under some health and safety regulations around how many people and what we can do in those spaces. So that was the other reason that I started going, like these 2 have been the top priorities for the reasons Bob said, with assistant coaches, with health and safety and injuries and things like that, but also around anything from like bench management to succession programs. Like varsity coaches don't stick around forever. The idea of having assistant coaches that understand how things are run as being able to eventually step into these positions, I think would keep all of our programs functioning at a really high level.
We have 2 assistant coaches for football. I'm just looking at our personnel.
We have 2 assistant coaches for football. We have swimming assistant coaches. Like those were built in some of the sports that don't have JV and modified. We use some of these coaches, like the track program has assistant coaches, but we don't pay for a modified coach. We use one of the assistant coaches as an assistant coach and they deliver the modified service. I do the same thing with swimming because we don't have a feeder program. If we offered the different levels, then we'd have multiple coaches. We're one of the only we're a pretty high performing track program. And we're one of the few programs that don't have a varsity boys coach and a varsity girls coach, and then an assistant for each. We have one varsity coach in the track sports. Cross country, I split it a couple of years ago, and it was almost a wash. I did 2 varsity coaches and then added a modified coach and got rid of the assistant. But there have been creative ways that we've gone about, staffing these programs that really have left coaches kind of alone with kids. And we don't do that in a setting, we try to maintain that ratio of about 24-1, 25-1, like whatever a field trip is. And some of our rosters are pushing over that with no paid assistant. I just don't think that it's a good scenario for us long-term. You guys have heard the stories of getting called at the dinner table because someone got a concussion and an ambulance has to go with a kid. And I'm not letting a kid go by themselves if the parent's not there. Right now, even more so with COVID, we've had coaches quarantined and I've had volunteer coaches appointed to take, per diem positions. If you had assistant coaches, you could be moving some of these around.
So we don't have to necessarily solve it tonight, but it was taking the equivalent, the value of this proposal of these 2 priorities and understanding what direction you'd like to go based on the recommendation. Okay.
Thanks, Barry.
Any questions about athletics? Okay, I think that to sum up this area, and thank you, Barry, it's just that as I started the presentation earlier this evening, is that the program that we are putting forward is consistent with prior years relative to that, and then the new initiatives that we've highlighted. Okay.
While we're thanking everyone, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank all the coaches and you, Barry, for moving all these things around. I mean, things happened very last minute in athletics, and you guys were able to get it together and give these kids, a fantastic seasons. So thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Okay, so moving on, I'm just going back to the final component of the this budget presentation. As I said, we have certainly a long list of co-curricular activities, non-athletic activities throughout the district. Primarily, the focus in this part of the budget is for secondary level experiences. We plan to offer, based on a normal return to school, the range of opportunities for students both at Homix and high school. So you see here, this is a level funded budget going back to the adopted budget. Proposing $390,211. This is funding for the stipends per the MTA contract. And just to give you a quick sampling, Homix, this is the board over the last several years committed to expanding the number of opportunities. One placeholder I'd like to say is that Annie alluded to in her summary, we are interested with the schedule change to really investigate the possibility of situating co-curricular activities for students during the lunchtime period. And so working with Dr. Saki in the coming weeks, his PTA, to see about how we get creative around developing a program of opportunities for students during the day, in addition to after school activities. At the high school, I would say part of what we've been able to accomplish around lunchtime, the centralized lunch experience, is just a range of really enriching and exciting opportunities for students to engage. This is what I would say a hallmark of the high school experience. We've expanded these opportunities. There's a lot of interest across a range of activities in the club fair, in the fall, and I think it continued in the spring, is a really great way to engage students, to connect socially, to find their passion and have opportunities. And so We're very proud of this area of expenditures and the experience and the leadership of teachers who are doing this. In addition to that, you have many student-led clubs as well. So this is just a core of what we see the high school and Homix experience to be all about. Okay.
And I know that budget line is remaining flat.
That's correct. And so that's it. I know it seemed to be a long presentation and there's no way around it. This is the biggest portion of the budget. We wanted to give you an opportunity to see within the function areas, the details, the explanation of the increases, decreases, talk about staffing, programs, experiences, trends, data, and here we are. It's about 10 o'clock, I believe. And I guess you've been able to ask questions throughout. I know that we have a period of questions for the audience as well. I would suggest that in some ways, using this time to see if there are questions for the board or additional requests for information that could lead into posting an FAQ and or coming back to the next meeting to kind of respond as well. So any general questions from the board?
I have a general question and then just a comment. So Sylvia, in going back, I know we always talk about, budgeting, to actuals, what was actually expended. Now we couldn't do that necessarily with this past budget year because it was such a wacky year and lines were different from what we would see in a normal year. So could you just speak briefly as to you and Bob as to the data you used to put together this budget? Did you go back 2 years? How did you work your magic?
So the salaries and the benefits, which are 80% of the budget, roll forward. So those are actual people's salaries as to where they'll be next year on the salary schedules. The remaining, the things like utilities, things like that, we looked at. We didn't really pay much attention to last year other than comparing rates and usage before we closed. But we used the numbers from the year before, but more importantly, we use the year-to-date numbers for this year. It's always really important to not go budget to budget, but to go actual to budget. So I would say for the majority of things, transportation, utilities, things like that, we used the current year numbers that we had at January 31st.
Thank you, very helpful. And, one comment as far as going forward, I think what might be helpful, although we haven't done this in the past, is that we could use FAQs as a means to answer questions. I know that we might, have a subsequent meeting where if there are questions that we see often repeated, we may actually respond to those during a budget meeting where we'll just, read some of those out loud as a way to answer questions. And I know that Sylvia, one of the things that you're graciously doing with your time is, there's the Budget 201 meeting on Thursday that's being sponsored by PT Council at 9:30, where you're also going to go through the budget. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would say that we are certainly open to, and Sylvia and I discussed this, of fielding questions between now and our next budget meeting and using time during the next meeting to just read out those questions and providing detailed responses and posting those responses as well. We want to be as transparent with the community to really respond to specific detailed questions as well as trends that come forward by a number of individuals.
Right. So I just want to let the community know before we go into public comment, and I do want to see if the board has any questions, that we're not going to respond to very detailed questions now, but there will be an opportunity. We will collect those. There will be an opportunity to have those questions answered. Anybody on the board? Wow, you really worn everybody out.
No, Rena,
that is the intention here, was to provide a lot of detail and go that route.
No, I just wanted to thank everyone individually. So Dina, Sylvia, Annie, Nora, Jen, Alex, Barry, Bob. This was a very detailed analysis of this portion of the budget, and it was much appreciated. I know last year we didn't necessarily get the opportunity to go in this depth based on sort of the situation we found ourselves in. So really much appreciated, and I look forward to the future meetings where we can dive in deeper into other sections. So thank you for that.
On a personal note, Paul, this is your last budget round on the board.
That is correct.
Yeah, and I would say that, for those who've been in the community for a while, moving away from the line by line, what we're trying to do is highlight the major areas of each component of the instructional portion of the budget. Examples, I think the in-depth look at special ed and student support services, certainly Annie discussing the range of professional development activities, connection to programs, and trying to highlight everything that's in this budget from, multiple years. I think that's it. As Sylvia suggested, it comes down to salaries, benefits as making up a majority of this budget. We know that there's limited discretion in terms of discretionary funding. Our next meeting, we're going to focus in on, I would say, the administrative component of general support and transportation, the things that are non-instructional. We'll get through that quickly so we can come back to program based on interest and just the public's questions.
Anybody on the board?
I just have a very general question. Has this portion of the presentation ever been broken down into like 3 sub presentations? There was so much meat in this, and I felt it was, just maybe 2 topics at a time. I mean, there was a lot here. Has that ever happened before, or has it always been just one overall presentation on the meat of the budget?
Not necessarily in my 11 years. And before that, we'd spend the entire Saturday going from 8 o'clock in the morning to probably about 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, doing the entire budget. So it's something we can talk about in the future and just see how that goes, putting more meetings and less topics.
I was hoping Paul would have said he'd seen something like that before, but that's okay. That's okay.
Okay. I am going to give a abbreviated public participation at public meetings. This is our policy 1230. I would ask that you just please state your name and address. Time is limited to 3 minutes. No comments regarding personnel or students. As always, as the community always is, please be respectful and civil. And I already mentioned that we will try to respond to questions that require a detailed response at another meeting or by email. So with that, I want to open up the meeting to any questions. Debbie, do we have anybody?
Not as of yet. Let's wait a minute. Okay, we do now. Andreen Smith. Go ahead, Andreen.
Hi, Andreen Smith, MAS. I had a couple of questions. There was a discussion or reference to the Family Academy and before and after school family counseling. I wasn't clear if those were the same things, meaning is the family counseling the Family Academy or something separate? And what are the eligibility requirements for that? How do parents get to participate in that?
So I'm happy to start to answer that. This is actually something that's in progress. So Lisa Garcia came to the district-wide crisis team meeting just recently. And she had the opportunity to collaborate with some professionals from Osning, and they have a very extensive family program. It's a community-based school system kind of program where they offer a variety of workshops to parents based on what parents have expressed as a need. That can be anything from introduction to the community, to financial resources for communities, et cetera. But the vision, and all I can do right now is share the vision because we're just starting the work, is that it would be a structure that would provide a monthly calendar of workshops that would be available to all 6 of our schools, to parents and families in all 6 of our schools based on their interest and need. The way the topics would be identified would be through interviewing families over the course of the summer, through Google surveys, through phone surveys, that kind of thing. But again, this is just in the beginning stages. The before and after school counseling would be just one of the mechanisms that would fall under that umbrella. But that we're actively pursuing with our community agencies' participation as a separate entity as well, even though we're still building Family Academy. So we're calling it the Family Academy as the umbrella. The work is to develop that to be able to pilot it next school year, probably a couple of months into the school year before the first series of workshops would be identified. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I look forward to learning more about that as you develop it.
Sure, I'd be happy to come back with it.
There also, Nora, there's the social workers have been conducting ongoing open hours with parents and families. Is that during the school year, right? Like every other week,
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, they have a lot of internal mechanisms, and that's where a lot of the ideas came. But in the effort, again, to kind of systematize it and bring the whole community together around those needs, that's where the whole idea of what we're calling Family Academy came up.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nora, and thank you, Green.
I have another question if there's no one else.
There is nobody else at this time.
Okay, so my question is about the budgeting for the DET initiatives. I know the board has been expressing its commitment to equity for several months now, and I wanted to get a better sense of the budget allocation for that, which is the $75,000 referenced, but then that also includes payment for the consultant that's been leading the initiative and then for the co-coordinators that are also participating. So that really drops it down to about $53,000 in terms of actual programming for the academic year. And that doesn't seem like enough in terms of the commitment the board has expressed. So I wanted to understand a bit more about what that's based on. So for example, the equity audit, which budgets $10,000. When we've looked at that, the budgets come in a lot higher than that for equity audits. So I'm trying to get a better sense of where those numbers came from.
So the numbers came from, if I can just respond, the numbers came from both April Francis Taylor and the work of Leon and Jenny in developing a proposal for the budget. I think it's important to clarify that, one, our interest to build momentum and support the work is also connected to what I would say is this sustained leadership effort across the system, because I would say that buildings and staff are different places. And so a lot of the work is generated at the building level among the faculty and the building leaderships and the alignment. The second thing is, I think it's important to clarify, and I think at our next meeting, April will touch on this, the equity audit is a component audit as part of this budget. We are very mindful and careful not to overpromise, overcommit around this work to make sure that we build momentum. And so that is the amount that was recommended by April based on certainly what we plan to accomplish around engaging a third-party consultant. And that's what we plan to do.
Okay, but there's going to be there's going to be updates from April and the DET at some point for the end of the year. Okay. All right. Thank you, Bob.
This is the budget that they proposed as we developed plans for year one of the district equity team. Exactly.
Okay.
I guess I don't understand what you mean by the component piece.
Can we, Andreen, I think I just want to be mindful of the time. I think this is a question that requires an even longer response. So since they're going to be updates all along, if you wouldn't mind if we could respond to that separately, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that is it for tonight. No more.
Well, I want to thank everybody, and unfortunately, I still have to read a couple of announcements, but aside from the board and Bob, The rest of you, I would suggest that you go get a good night's sleep to be ready for early tomorrow morning. So future business. Requirements for the budget and election of trustees. In order to vote on the budget and election of school board trustees on Tuesday, May 18th, 2021, it is necessary to be registered. Anyone registered for general elections is eligible to vote. For those who are not already registered, school voter registration day will be held on Wednesday, May 12th in the district clerk's office from 8 to 3 p.m. at Mamaroneck High School, or any school day with the district clerk at Mamaroneck High School. The last day to register is Thursday, May 13th by 4 p.m. in the district clerk's office. Applications for absentee ballots are available from the district clerk in schools and from our website. Ballot applications must be received by the district clerk no earlier than 30 days before the vote. Absentee ballots are due in the office of the district clerk by 5 p.m. Tuesday, May 18th. For details or questions, please contact the district clerk, Joanne Rice, at 914-220-3007 or visit the district website. Transportation announcement. Residents of the Mamaroneck Union Free School District that wish to request transportation for school-aged children to private and parochial schools must submit their request to transportation at ardsleyschools.org by 4 p.m. on Thursday, April 1st, 2021. The form is available on the district's website. To access the form, click the transportation link under the community tab and look for the application for 21-22. To be eligible for transportation, K through 8 grade students must live more than 2 and less than 15 miles from the school. 9 through 12th grade students must live more than 3 and less than 15 miles from the school. New districts moving into the school district after April 1st must apply for transportation within 30 days of establishing residency in the district. Parents who are even just considering sending their child to a non-public school should submit an application for every school that they may be considering. All late applications will be denied. Upcoming meetings. Tuesday, April 8th, 7 p.m. Board of Education meeting. Topic: Superintendent's recommended budget. Tuesday, April 20th, Board of Education business meeting. Adoption of the budget. Tuesday, May 4th, Board of Education at 7 p.m. Board of Education meeting, and that is the budget hearing. Meetings will be held remotely. If Governor Cuomo does not extend his executive order 20272, the meetings will be held in either the tiered classroom or McLean Auditorium at Mamaroneck High School. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Paul.
Second. All in favor? Good night,
Aye.
everybody. Thanks,
Good
everybody,
night.
for hanging in there with us. Good night.
Good night.